Topic 2. A private Chicago prep school is under fire after Project Veritas secretly filmed one of its health instructors discussing a recent lesson. In the video, the instructor states that an LGBTQ group came to his class of high school age students and passed around sex toys while explaining their use. The instructor said this behavior was acceptable since it was queer sex education. The school stands by the instructor, saying Veritas manipulated the footage and his words. Do you think that this lesson, as described, was acceptable? Should the instructor be fired? Is this lesson a larger statement on progressive teaching methods? And we give credit to GSU Gambit, who just magically appeared. Awesome. Yeah, so we're going to talk about this thing. Yeah, there's the guys talking about he says it in the video, like they were passing around dildos and butt plugs, and then like giving a top, talking about how they use them, whether it's lube or with spit or whatever, right? That was like the topic of conversation during this high school health class, and I don't consider Project Veritas to be a place that you should be listening to, like a verified source. But the footage right now is the footage.
Veritas.
Yeah,
Definitely
the footage is the footage. That's all we have to go by. So I want to focus this topic on what we have. So let's start with Lactoid for opening statement.
There is a claim that the footage is manipulated. So everything that I'm about to say is based on the footage that I've seen, and I don't know if it's actually entirely clipped and not taken out of context. Maybe he said, I very much am against, and then he said everything that he said later in the video. I don't know that for a fact, but I'm very doubtful. I'm especially doubtful given that the school has defended that dean, Bruno, which is a fitting name, and defended him and didn't specify any claim that was manipulated, and simply stated that Bruno was being, quote, inclusive and LGBTQ affirming in that with what he was doing, or what I guess the group was doing. I also don't know somehow some of the statements could even be taken out of context, but again, taking the footage at face value, it seems like this went too far even for a health class. The point of health class should be to teach things in as sterile a way as possible, taking great care to discourage minors from engaging in sex, teaching children about the risks involved and how to mitigate those risks, and to avoid glorifying or encouraging sexual activity. What this man is describing seems to be glorifying, encouraging, or suggesting ways that children can engage in different forms of sex. Based on the video, I think this is an example of children being sexualized, which is extremely disappointing.
Thank you, Lactoid. Scott.
So, first off, Project Veritas has over 300 retractions on their retracto wall, and they've never lost a defamation suit ever. So in terms of trusted sources, they're certainly more trustworthy than CNN, MSNBC, ABC, Washington Post, Washington Times, New York Times, New Yorker, etc. Because they have a better record. People don't like them because they do actual journalism. It just happens to be right-wing bias. That is what it is. Journalists always have a bias, and they admit their bias. They're coming after the groomers. Now, to talk about the specific case, what we're talking about is a voluntary program for 14 and up kids. I can use the term kids because the guy in the video used the term kids. So if you yell at me and say, well, it's no fucking kids, well, he called them kids. So fuck off. So these kids are have a drag queen come in and explain queer sex to them. Now, you might say, well, this doesn't fit grooming because the parents are aware. Well, the parents aren't really aware, but it is a woke private school. It's always been a woke private school, and the parents were probably okay with it. So in terms of political indoctrination all the way to the extent of grooming, it is indoctrination, but the parents are, presumably okay with said indoctrination. They sent their kids there, and this is the kind of shit that school does. Now, what it is political indoctrination. You can tell this immediately because he doesn't say anal sex. He doesn't say, we're trying to teach them how to be safe in terms of, different types of sex and talking about the boundaries and what's healthy in that. He says queer sex. Queer sex is immediately political because queer is an identity without an essence. Queer sex is a meaningless term because there is no such thing as queer sex. Queer sex is just sex. The reason he says queer sex is because it's political indoctrination. It's engaging in a little bit of drag pedagogy, engaging in generative themes by bringing very spicy things, putting hands on, and utilizing queer theory to its best practices to try and engage in the conscientiation of their students from a Freirean technique. It's very anti-banking system of education. It's not about teaching facts. It's not about teaching things that are important for them to know, but instead engaging as equals with spicy topics so that you can decodify those things. So this is without a doubt political indoctrination of children towards critical gender theory, queer theory, critical theory, wokeness, whatever you want to talk about. But it's not quite grooming because this is not done in isolation from the parents to abuse the children, because the parents are aware that they're sending their children to be turned into, antagonists against the system. So that's my opening statement.
Okay, thanks so much, John. Corey, please.
Yeah, I don't think I have a lot to say. Since, as you alluded to earlier, I don't know. I'm not an expert on Project Veritas, but from the little that I do know, it doesn't seem like they're at all a trustworthy source of. Not that every single news outlet is trustworthy, but the wording that Scott used, I think was interesting. Where it's like, yeah, it doesn't seem like they've ever been found guilty, but it seems like Project Veritas has lost lawsuits and have been ordered to, pay damages. Like they have been found basically like liable for things. I guess maybe not technically guilty. So it's not like I think it's fair to like frame it as like some sort of like perfect record. And what I would say, I guess to like wrap up is like basically, even if the footage wasn't doctored, I don't even trust like the person, even if they are the dean. Like I don't anything that they claim that was taking as the lesson, I don't take it that actually occurred. Like until I actually see like footage of what actually the lesson was in the classroom, like I just don't really take it seriously. And I'll leave it there for now.
Go.
There's not enough evidence for me to have any actual honest opinion on it. I need to see the entire video, but I will say that you need to have CHP standards. If you have actual standards, then you can actually argue these things, because I'd love to be able to take what he is saying in the full context of the clip, because basically, yeah, like what he is saying, I'd fire that nigga in a heartbeat. This is such a retarded position that people might think I'm not going to hold. Like, of course, that nigga should be fired. That nigga should be held accountable for his actions and his words, regardless of the fact that he's at a convention. However, I'm not going to hold this motherfucker his ass to coals, because again, we understand that Project Veritas is an actual piece of shit organization that wants to warp things and warp information and warp things for people that they don't like. And like, we can recognize it being true, but also recognize that the nigga was out of pocket for the things that he said. However, he's in the context of a convention, so people are going to have different conversations about the things that they're doing in an educational environment. But I would still stand by my opinion that you need to have comprehensive physical education and sexuality standards. Like every single example of these, every time I see this bullshit, it's always some private school or some institution that's able to function separate from the public school system, and then they're using that as a cudgel, because they're the critique of the elite or critique of some other shit to act like the left, the liberal left, blah, blah, blah. It's like, man, go touch grass and touch your wife. I don't know what to fucking tell you, friend. But it's like, at the end of the day, like, schools have and should have sexuality standards in schools. They should have that. And when you have these clear guidelines, you have the clear rules of the road, you can just navigate accordingly. So then when you see your dean of school, whatever the fuck this man does for a living, gets paid over an exorbitant amount of money, you can hold this nigga to account. And very clearly, they don't have standards, so you can't hold this nigga to account. He can just kind of say whatever the fuck he wants. And then when you have a clip like this, and if you can see the full totality of the clip, and then you can break it down in all the context, then you can make the saying like, oh, we can look to the standards and say that, hey, this is something that goes against our standards, and we should go after this. Other than that, you're doing this morality policing, and that's totally fine if you have a job. I understand that, but like at the end of the day, like, we have ways of going about this that public schools should do, and private schools should do it too. Just because you can send your kid to a private school doesn't mean you shouldn't be held accountable for the dumb shit you say at a convention.
Okay, thanks so much. Let's go to Johnny Scarlett.
Okay, I'm gonna play this a little bit more straight and go with this clip and this information being legitimate to what happened. I would firstly disagree that this is outright indoctrination, simply because this was a voluntary event that was clearly being held by an LGBT center. If that student or that student's parents did not consent to them being taught by explicitly queer people, then I don't believe that student should have been there or could have been there. What I will say is that as a queer person, sex toys and extraneous things having to do with, let's say, the more experimental parts of sex, and be really safe with it, are not necessary for safe sex. Safe sex is a condom or a dental dam. If you teach kids, and we already do this in schools, we already do this in public schools. If you teach kids how to use a condom and a dental dam, you have covered safe sex for everybody with genitals. And that, I think, by the standards that, admittedly, I went to a very rural, very closed off community school. And so I can't speak for the standards of all Americans, but by the standards that I went to school with, that would be more than enough for children who are 14 and up to have at their disposal.
Okay, thank you so much. Let's go to Bilbo.
So something that Scott said that I actually wrote down as part of my intro was that it is a generative theme. The reason that they're doing this is that they're trying to decodify or demystify the idea of so-called queer sex. Because just like what's should I call you Johnny Scarlett or Johnny?
Johnny
Johnny?
is fine.
So what Johnny just said about
fucking ally boys.
If you have a condom and a dental dam, you have covered safe sex. And sex ed is about safe sex and about the reproductive process. It's purely biological. I believe it was Lactoid who said we should be encouraging minors to abstinate from sex. They're not old enough to consent to sex, which means that it is inappropriate for an adult to be handing them fucking dildos and butt plugs and telling them about having sex for pleasure, because that's what comprehensive sex education is actually for. I believe it is wholly inappropriate. The entire event, anyone involved with the organization and implementation of that event needs to be removed and, frankly, in prison. That's it.
Okay.
Thanks.
GSU.
Yo, what's up?
What's up?
Wait, y'all can hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Ah, cool. Yeah, so when I heard about this, I had a friend actually send me this. And when I heard about this, I was horrified. I think the only thing more horrifying is Corey saying, I like to see the video in class before I can have an opinion on it. But when it comes to everybody attacking Project Veritas, I think they do have some bit of a checkered past. But the reason why I particularly looked at this was because I looked at the apology that was issued by the school. So the school has since removed their Twitter. The dean, I think, has since removed all of his social media accounts. So they seem to be, doing what people that aren't innocent do. But they didn't make any specific claims that anything that he said wasn't true. And that's what I was looking for, because if they would have came out with a statement that I'm like, oh, well, he said this and this was clearly not true, or this is blah, 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 this is what they cut, then maybe I would have been a little bit more lenient. But it seems like their statement was, well, this is a far right organization that's attacking us. And hopefully to us people with brains, that's not enough to say that we shouldn't listen to information from a source. If we were all left-leaning people and somebody on the right covered it, we shouldn't just not listen to it because it came from somebody on the right. But I think a lot of what has been said here by Fabian and by others is sex education, and the idea of it was to teach kids what sex was, what the dangers were, and things like that. I think the idea of talking about what can make sex fun and all these type of things you get into obvious grooming territory that if you were to text these things to a kid, you'd be in jail. So I think the idea that we could erect a sexual education system, like, and be able to do these things when we know that kids can't consent to it, is pretty wild to me. So I kind of agree with Bilbo that hopefully people involved with grooming children go to jail, and I'm hoping that a lot of us here on the left can agree with that. I think the right, and as you go back in history, um, a lot of things were like laced with homophobia, right? And they used to, like, just lie and say, hey, these people are this, these people are groomers. But I think increasingly we can see that there is a sect of potentially the LGBT and potentially just the left that seem to have more nefarious things in mind. And I think that us as like reasonable people should separate ourselves from those people and say these people aren't the left. We aren't groomers and people that are interested in kids. And I think that's important. So yeah, hopefully we can all do that today and point out that, giving dildos and butt plugs to 14-year-olds is not something we should be buying.
DB?
So I was a little bit not confused, just disappointed when I saw this story, when I watched the news clip or whatever. Because during the discourse about the Don't Say Gay bill, or the Parental Rights and Education bill, is what it's actually called in Florida, what a lot of people on the right decided was a good starting point for sexual education, for learning about gender identity, different kinds of sexuality, etc., was third grade, right? Which is what that bill was pushing. And then beyond that, it's, hey, whatever's appropriate to the age of the kid and the grade level that they're at. So I think that we are when Bruno is speaking specifically about high school students in this. He calls them kids, but as a fellow grown-ass man, I also consider high school students to be kids, right? So yeah, it's reasonable that he called them kids. They are kids. But I think that as a high school student, it's totally fine for them to be learning about dildos and lube and how to apply these things. I think that's totally reasonable. I think they would have gotten the reproductive shit earlier in their education, about STDs and pregnancy and masturbation, all that kind of shit. But if they're at like the high school level, and this is like a course where the parents are like aware of like what's going to be taught. Hey, we're talking about queer sexuality. A lot of that's going to involve fucking strap-ons and lube and shit, right? And even like straight sex involves strap-ons sometimes, involves lube, involves dildos, involves like sex toys for your dick that you can strap on so your dick vibrates when you're fucking somebody. There's a ton of shit you can get into. Right? I think it's totally fine for high school students to start learning about this, given that the reality is most of these kids are going to be sexually active. I was sexually active at like fucking 12 years old, right? I'm sure most of you guys were sexually active in high school, right? So given that they're probably sexually active already, right, and they're fucking high school age, they're about to get out of school, it's reasonable, I think, to teach them about this stuff.
So I'm going to go before the panel jumps in. Like, it's a hell of a thing. Like, watching that video, for whatever it's worth, is a hell of a thing. Would I have designed this lesson? Probably not. I could see something like this happening. However, I do want to kind of expand on what Doobie said, in that, like, it's not that I hear Johnny when they talk about like safe sex is a condom and a dental dam, right? That you accomplish safe sex, and I think that's what maybe was referenced in the video. I forget if he did, but if the idea is to accomplish safe sex, well then yes, you've done that. However, kids know a lot more than that, right? Like, kids have the internet, this thing that we're on now, and pretty much unrestricted access to it. All those things, those and butt plugs, unless they're like super restrictive, their parents, right? Like, they know what that is, okay? And it's not that they're encouraging kids to have sex, certainly not. At least I don't know. Well, I can't speak for that. Well, I'm just gonna assume I don't know if they are. So it's not that it's not that you should encourage kids to have sex. I wouldn't do that. However, it's understanding that kids do have sex all the time, and they get into some crazy things and they hurt themselves. So, like, an example would be like BDSM. You see some crazy shit on the internet, right? And you're like, let me try this. Hey, let me try fucking breath play. That'll be a good idea. Like, we need to, and it doesn't have to be so like exhaustive as to like all the things you could do in a fucking bedroom, right? But introduce, hey, like you need to consider your actions very carefully. There are implements that come into play when you are having sex. Be careful on how you do that. Like, worry about like consent and if you're going to use these things, right? And be careful if you're interfering with someone else's bodily functions in any which way. Like, things like that are important, right? But what would the headline be if we talked about BDSM and breath play? Oh, they're sexualizing the kids. They're introducing them to sadomasochism. Right, that would be the headline.
That would be, yes.
Just said like, hey,
Right,
man,
you don't even need to go that far though. I think a lot of people would freak the fuck out if you had like a class about anal sex, right? Gay kids probably gonna do anal sex at some point, and there's a lot you need to be aware of before you dive into that, like literally.
You do,
Right?
but
So-
there has to be a line. There has to be like, and I do think that it's a little bit, overreaching to say that queer sex inherently involves toys. By the way, like I do think that that's something to be looked at. But
James Dean's an idiot. James Bruno, excuse me, but that's an aside.
But that being said, there's got to be a line wherein you say, okay, we are going to explain sex to kids. We're even going to explain the dangers of different types of sex to kids, not just the dangers, but the I was going to say the ins and outs, the ups and downs of how safe you can be with these different types of sex. But at some point you draw a line and you say, okay, what are we actually going to show the kids, and what are we going to explain to them in a way that is expressly informative, that is expressly coming from a place of authority, which I also think was someone in question, like this idea that this is an LGBT center, that this is a place that's coming from somewhere that's not the school and it's voluntary. I hope that this was not something that was being explained to them as if they were equal.
Would it have been any better at all? Would it have been any better? Not that you have to agree with the lesson, but would it have just been slightly better if they had not actually passed the implements out, but like put a picture on screen and describe them? Like,
that's usually what happens.
That have been slightly better.
So let me explain.
You don't have to have like Prime, to your point. You don't need to show people what a noose is. Everybody knows what a fucking noose is when it comes in regards to history education. Like one of the reasons, like I'm using the history analogy because it's very easy to connect. Where like one of the reason why those ideas of doing slave walks in physical education was so fucking backwards was because you don't need to put children into these activities for them to understand like the problems that exist within chattel slavery, or like why certain things were bad. Because I don't know if you went through that, but my history teacher in fifth grade brought a noose into the classroom, and that nigga got fired. Like there's just some shit you recognize that like is this within is it within the curriculum? Two, is it doing something that could cause a potential distraction to the educational environment? And I'm a scholar on here and say if you were to bring in sex toys to class, it is reasonable, especially within like the guidelines in New Jersey, it is reasonable to believe that you would be causing a distraction to the educational environment. Therefore,
but what if the lesson is the sex toys?
What the fuck are you talking about, lactoid? I said all this shit trying to connect.
The person who brought the noose in. The person who brought the noose in.
Like, does it matter? She was Latino. Do you want to know her phone number too?
Latino.
So you guys can talk it out.
Look, if it was a white guy, it'd be a lot worse.
Like I said, when she lost her
she got fired.
License.
Like, what do you want? Like, you think they'd shoot him or something?
License over that shit. Like,
so this is.
Wait, hold on. Wait, can I? So Joe, but please, one second.
No, I'm not the content here. I'm not the content. What's up?
Well,
no, Joe. I just I think if you brought like a sex toy into like any like normal classroom, sure, right? But if the lesson plan is how do we use sex toys? What's the safe way to do this? Should I use lube? If you're going to do anal sex, what do you got to be aware of? What do you got to prepare for?
It's
Like
already in
so,
the
if but if
textbooks.
that's the lesson plan, right? Then of course it
Mhm.
makes sense to bring sex toys
It's
in.
already like so. What is the
No.
Let's walk it through. Let's walk it through. Why do you think you need to bring in sex toys to talk about sex toys? Why do you think they need to
can
be brought
Visual
answer
aids are
this.
extremely useful when
Okay,
teaching
why
Gooby.
a
can't
person
that?
something.
Okay, so let's walk through this. Let's walk through this. Why do we need a physical visual aid versus a pictorial visual aid that would exist in a textbook? Why
The
would
same
somebody-
reason they
Codification.
teach kids. The same reason they teach kids to put on condoms with like bananas and shit, right? Like it's
No.
extremely
Why
helpful
they don't
to have
do that
somebody there
anymore.
walking
No.
through the
Gooby.
process.
They
Can we
don't
bring
do
a
that
naked?
No.
anymore.
Can we bring a
but-
naked guy? Like,
No.
hey, we need like
No.
a penis. So like, we need
No.
like a
Need a
guy
penis.
standing by each desk with like.
One
their
of us
dick out.
actually
Is that okay?
understands what the fuck is happening here, all right? First and foremost, I dare any
Two of
of you
us.
to find an organization with better track record than Project Veritas.
This
Good
is
luck.
retarded. We can
You're
move
gonna
on
go
from
back
it.
to You're gonna go back to Acorn.
No
Cool.
Veritas Sims in this panel except for one. That's
Okay.
okay.
I mean,
Yeah.
No, Project
Well, just
no.
saying,
To be
good
clear,
luck.
I love to be clear.
Good luck.
I love Project Veritas too. I agree with Scott about
Oh,
that.
two
Like
cents,
they're
two
very
cents.
they're
Good luck.
very like
Two cents.
dependable.
Good luck. Number two, there's oh my god, what you are finding here is that there is drag pedagogy, right? You have Alexis Bevels coming in.
Have fun,
You have-
Johnny.
I mean, it's their fucking literature, not mine. All right, you have drag pedagogy coming in with a drag individual and engaging in embodied kinship with the individuals here. There is a reason that they voluntarily bring in people that self-identify as queer. Queer sex is a meaningless term. There's no such thing as queer sex. That is a political message. Number one. Number two, you have a drag person that is giving less money. Is the drag person some fucking expert? Is the drag person some health expert? No. The reason that the drag person is there is for the embodied kinship. And why is embodied kinship important? Because they are going through a process of decommodification. They want to see themselves in the generative theme with the individual. They want to be seen as individuals that are all part of the queer community, and then they want to play with the adults. They want to water down the barriers between adult and child in this situation so that they're all in an even level, so then they can see themselves within the instantiation of what is occurring. There's no fucking reason that you need to bring in toys. You need to talk about spitting on it. I'm sure if you saw the fucking video, it would be disturbing as fuck because there'd be all these weird fucking jokes from a drag queen in the middle of it. But the entire thing is that they're going there. It's fucking playbook Freudian fucking education, right? They're against the idea of a bank account model of education where you give them facts and you make sure that they're able to spit those facts back, right? Like it very easily could teach them the facts about what is safe and not safe. But that's not what this is about. This is about political indoctrination to make people antagonists against cis heteronormativity.
Have fun, Johnny.
A response to this. I have a response to this, and it's not what y'all are expecting. I will say that. My first part of the response is I cannot tell if the drag queen was the instructor or not because the direct quote, yes, that's what I'm thinking, Joe, is because the direct quote was the drag queen was there to hand out brownies and cookies. That's my first part. But my second part is drag is so staunch in the main celebrities of drag, at least, are so staunch that they are not sexualizing anyone who is a child, that they are not expected to be sexualized in areas where there are children. That's why we are attempting, or they are attempting, to desexualize themselves in things like having library readings and things like that. But
Can I
this
ask a
is
question?
a
Can I
direct...
ask a clarifying question, Johnny? You're walking into a landmine. I want you to clarify. How do you feel about drag queens outside the educational environment?
Drag
where
queens
children are involved?
Where children are involved, it depends on if it's a children's show or not.
Gotcha.
Like there are people like Trixie Mattel who explicitly say, hey, my form of drag is something that is adult. I do adult comedy and adult songs, and so I don't perform for children. However, this is a direct flip of that. This is a drag queen who was willingly in a situation where she knew that there would be sex and children at the same time. And that, to me, it is at the very least irresponsible.
It's drag pedagogy. It's drag pedagogy.
I know you keep saying that, and I'm partially agreeing with you. This drag queen should not have been in a space where she could have risked sexualizing drag to children. And that's also why I don't think BDSM should be taught, and I don't think that other forms of
Okay.
kink should be taught. 1 second, I'm almost done. I don't think that forms of kink should be taught because I don't think that we should suggest kinks to people who haven't developed them yet.
So Johnny,
Let's
just
go
to be,
to-
because I have a really quick question.
Quick.
It-
Okay, then I gotta
to
go to
save so
Bilbo,
much time.
and then I'll go to GSU.
So Johnny, do you
Yes.
think it's possible? Well, it's a twofold question one. Do you think it's possible that drag queen was entering into an environment that she might not have known the full scope of the conversation, and that's the conversation of sex could have possibly been omitted as it relates to her appearance there?
I don't know. I don't
Okay.
know because this was explicitly an event that was scheduled and she was
Gotcha.
hired for it or whatever.
Gotcha. But you would say that if you are someone in drag, it might behoove you to be sensitive about like sort of the context that you're finding yourself in.
I do. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Hopefully that
Question.
saves time.
I was just
No,
there to
hold
hand
on.
out brownies.
Wait,
I didn't
gotta
know there
go-
was going to be.
You gotta go to Bilbo.
The reason why I say that, the reason why I say that
Small-
is because
Yeah.
there are situations where people in the compilation of an entire event or entire compilation of events do not know what's happening throughout the entire scope of the event during that day. So
That is true.
individuals can come into a situation and not know what was previously said or previously talked about. This
And
could
if I
be-
was that drag queen, I would have left.
right, and
personally.
sure,
Yeah,
because
just a clarifying
because
question.
Yeah.
I thought maybe this is going to be a big question. I shouldn't ask it, but I thought people that are drag queens, we have to use she pronouns. I thought that
We
was
don't.
specific.
It's part of the
no.
drag performance. No, actually,
No,
you do.
But
Otherwise, you're being
drag
a
is just like blackface for women.
No,
I don't think it should be
it's not.
celebrated at all. It
Yeah,
absolutely.
but
It's just
Drag,
a
You have to
hey,
call
can
the drag
I
queen she.
can I answer that
no.
question?
Bilbo, no. I
Alright.
thought it was a small question.
It's like a modern day minstrel show.
It's just
Oh
a
my God.
cultural it is a queer cultural thing. It is sort of traditional to call a person she while they are in drag.
Yeah, well,
That's
she
all
is
it is.
performing. Yeah, or you're a bigot.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
That's not okay. You
No, but
can
what are you
just
talking
But that's
go
what it
on
is,
with
right?
it
Dumbass-
yourself.
also, like,
You can
I know
go
I have
on-
a PhD in dumbass male smiles. What are you trying to get at, Bilbo? Why don't
Yeah,
you speak
for
your-
real.
We haven't
I
seen
got
you
a
from the last
PhD in
topic.
dumbass male haircuts. What do you think about that? Flat top. Shut the fuck up.
Ba-
I'm
I
just
Shut
wouldn't
up,
be
flat top,
talking.
but,
I
you
wouldn't
know.
be talking.
Okay,
You're balding, my friend.
Bilbo.
You better watch. You
Well,
better
I
get
would
some of that
say-
Rogaine, my friend.
So
Rogaine.
I would say
Rogaine.
that the difference. So a lot of people, I think it was Doobie and Joe, both said this, that kids are having sex anyway, so we gotta
I never said that. That's all
astroturf
Doobie.
that.
Don't
Hey,
rope me.
shh.
Don't rope me into.
Hey,
Don't rope me
hey,
into
shh.
Doobie's
Hey,
pieces of content. I'm gonna talk
Hey.
over you. I'm gonna talk over you. You're gonna have to really deal with that. So what
I'm
are
gonna
do
get you a
about it?
shot
Okay,
collar.
okay,
Are you gonna
okay.
give me a shock
Oh my
collar? Was that
I
a threat
will.
of violence? Was that a
Whoa,
threat of
you.
violence?
whoa, back, because I know this is gonna go down.
Was that a threat of
not
violence,
so
Bilbo?
fun
You
talk.
want to elaborate on what you said there?
Bilbo,
I think that
let Bilbo get his point out. He's doing
yeah, let Bilbo talk. I think that there's a difference between a person going on the internet on their own and discovering gay sex and having a drag queen show up and facilitate butt plug and dildo story hour at your school with an LGBTQ health department. And I also think that these people, when they do these things, someone said that the drag queen might not have known. Was that you, Joe? I believe it was. The drag
It's
queen that went to
possible.
a school
I
might
can
not have
elaborate on
known
the
that they would
opinion.
be
I
around
can elaborate on
children
the
in high
opinion.
school, you fucking idiot. Maybe they
I
might
can
know
elaborate on
something.
the position, or you want to continue getting so mad that your hairline's going to keep going all the way back, like the fucking Pacific Ocean in the
Bro,
middle
I
of the
could.
winter.
There's like birds nesting in your hair. Are you for real? This is where we're going right now.
We're gonna, I
So-
will, I
Okay,
will love
ladies,
to
you're
see how
both
far
beautiful.
he
Let's
goes
just
here.
move
This
on
is
to
gonna
the
be
Yeah,
really
yeah.
cool.
Both beautiful.
I'm gonna love to
We
see
got
how far this goes, because I mean,
So I
know
don't
how
think
far this
the
is gonna go for you.
school-
So,
I don't-
Wait,
I don't
Joe,
think-
do you really think like the drag queen accidentally like, oh fuck, like I was just
No,
there
no,
for the
hold on.
brownies, like
guys,
you guys are
it's
so
act- Hold on,
dumb.
this is a simple point. Joe Lewis, I'll make the point for you. This is a very simple
Sure.
point. Like, there is a program that's being put on, an event. It's a multifaceted event. You don't know, as being one of those facets, what all those other facets might be, right? It could easily be possible that the person showed up and they thought they were going to have, like, maybe they thought they were just going to read stories to the kids, right?
Or
And
maybe
then
they
dildos
show up
comes
and do
out.
sex
They don't
ed
know-
for
They
adults.
don't know about
and the
that.
dildos
And then-
come out.
Yeah.
And then dildos come out. All right, yeah.
I hate when that
Crazy.
happens. Like you're
Yeah,
just
she
there
just
to
keeps
enjoy
dildos
it.
on her to just whip it out.
I've
whenever.
had a
People
few
take off
times
their
in Juarez,
pants.
Mexico, and I
And then
didn't know what to tell you.
the Johnny
But, like,
Scarlett's point, which I agree with her, is that if you were if I was somebody in a situation where I'm designed to talk about a specific particular thing, and somebody does something before me that I don't agree with, I'll just leave.
Get the fuck out of there.
Well, she didn't. She was there the whole time.
Yeah, because
First of all,
we don't know these
obviously-
things.
I don't
until
think
you
we
find
even
out after
know
the
that.
fact.
I don't
And
think we even know that. I think we
don't.
just like
She's
got, like,
pictured
2
in the
sentences
event.
on this
They're
little shit
handing the
show.
butt plug.
Project Veritas.
Yeah, but I'm saying,
they're gonna
listen.
loop it.
What
for you
was the
the whole
order?
thing.
What was the order of events? Was
We don't know.
the
We don't
cookies
know.
first or the dildos afterwards? Right?
Listen.
Our friend Lactoid
Listen.
At the
worked
same
this out.
time.
Listen.
Don't confuse the two. You gotta
Listen.
Come on,
Our
kids.
friend Lactoid
Listen.
worked that out in a case. Okay, hold on. No, don't not listen yet. Bilbo, I want to make sure you got everything out because you've been
Bilbo.
waiting.
Yeah, so the main difference is that I don't think that the school needs to be facilitating telling children how to be having sex for pleasure. Like there either is a line there or there isn't. So I don't know why why stop at BDSM? If we're going to butt plugs and dildos and we're talking about queer sex, why stop at BDSM? Why stop at anything at that point? Because at what
Okay.
point
That's
are we
retarded.
because you're telling them like, okay, well, you need to be safe, right? So this is a butt plug. This is how you put it in your butt so poop doesn't leak out of you. That's what they're teaching, and that needs to be safe, I
That's
guess.
not
That's not what
how
a
that
butt
works.
plug.
Yeah,
Why
you-
with the
Let's
butt
go
plug?
with that.
Maybe you need to listen to
Is that
someone.
not why?
It's actually so when you have a girlfriend and they're really gassy, butt plugs keep all the gas, and that's what they're
That's
actually.
true, right?
We
And,
found
and
the
then it comes
content.
out like a fucking
Praise
blow
God.
pop.
Praise God,
Really
we
the
found the
most
content.
informed on the
retract
topic,
everything
for
I've
sure.
I don't know.
We need this information. We
So,
need
like,
this education now.
I-
Fuck.
At what point do you seriously think like, all right, do these kids really need to hear this while they're right before band class? Do you need to learn how to stick a dildo in your ass before you go to chemistry and
But
pre-AP
what's
computer
wrong
science?
with okay? But these are high school students we're talking about, right? So like in high school, these
I
kids have been
agree.
exposed to this stuff already. Like I don't understand what like the big deal
Doobie.
is.
That's what I just said. There's a difference between being exposed
Well, yeah,
to it.
this is
on
why
your
you don't need to
own
go to
on
the
internet.
extreme, right?
Oh,
So
dude,
so
go,
so
Doobie, this is
teaching
an awful
teaching
argument, though.
kids about how to have like
Let
anal
them fight.
sex like
Black Toy,
safely,
know your role.
right? Well, if we do that, if we take that step, that doesn't mean we need to jump all the way to fucking role playing rape and shit like this, right? Like we can take like baby
Basically.
steps.
That's what
Right,
you're
So if you're talking about
No,
safety, you want to
you're-
educate
this
the
is-
kids into being safe in queer sex. Why stop there?
Doobie.
Wait, hold
This is
on.
all-
If
Okay,
kids
because
don't know how to
sex-
hold on.
because
Wait,
If high school
come on,
students
Ruby.
or
Step
young
away from
adults
the
do not
content.
know how to have
away from
anal
the
sex,
content.
and
This
plenty of
is
people who
not-
start anal sex don't know how to fucking do it, right? They're gonna get
This
hurt.
is
They're gonna hurt each
bullshit.
other.
You're obfuscating. You're obfuscating.
No, I'm
There's
not.
no reason. Yes, you fucking are, and you know it.
Explain.
There's no reason why you can't give information about safety that doesn't require a person, Bruno in this case, being excited about the presence of drag and the kids passing around having fun and giggling and like the beautiful learning environment playing with sex toys as equals. And that is where you can tell the difference between what is appropriate sex education. Like, look, this is a woke fucking school, okay? It always has been. It's it's always been a progressive school. They didn't get parental permission, and like Bruno said, they didn't fucking need it, and it was proven because there's no parents piss off about this, and on top of that, the school's backing him up. Okay, now the fact of the matter is that you just as easily could have a slideshow and a presentation about like understanding that STDs are more common in anal sex because of anal perforations, why it's important to go about things slowly in anal sex, and that like it's not like a fucking porno where you can just pop it in, but like you have to use things in order to be able to do this in a slower, more methodical way so that you don't have hemorrhoids, you don't have other issues, you don't have a higher risk of STDs. That you can talk about how like using water-based lubricant is something that's important and that spit isn't just a fucking substitute. And you can give that information to people that want that information at a high school level, which is all of the things you're talking about. But what you are doing is you're obfuscating from all of the things that clearly make this inappropriate. The toys, the giggling, the environment, the person that was there, and the fact that they're bragging about it and the names used all point to political indoctrination and inappropriate
Wait, hold on.
boundaries.
So to be super
I don't
clear,
think
right?
that political indoctrination is the issue in a
It most certainly is. You just don't
environment.
see it.
I see what you're getting at, but I feel very strongly that this is not the first and biggest problem with this situation. Okay,
Wait, no,
this
we-
is a
It's the
It's
situation.
the
Is
goal.
that
It's not
possible?
the problem. It's the goal.
Because you got nothing else, you
Wait,
fat
Doobie,
fuck. Shut the hell up.
Doobie, can I ask you? Doobie,
Damn.
can I ask you a quick question?
The content's right there, okay?
If what you're,
You can ask
if
me
you're-
literally anything.
Okay, if what you're saying is that like, well, they've seen it before, right? Because they see porn or whatever. Would you be okay with like
That's not all.
Hold on. Would you be okay with people like showing hardcore pornography like in a health class?
No, I don't think there's a good reason to. But what I don't know. So Scott, it seems like you basically agree with me, except like because I also
he's asking you to explain why not. Can you?
Yeah, I don't think you need to go that far, right? I don't think you need to show people actually having
You don't
sex.
need to go that far.
Yeah, we can take baby steps, right?
Why not?
So in the spirit of this school where there are apparently kindergartners and shit there too, we can take baby steps, right? We can take little kindergartner steps toward the goal of making sure these kids are safe when they're having sex. So I don't think we need to go all the way to like hardcore porn. We don't need to go all the way to like role playing rape. But hey, sex toys in the class so the kids know what they look like, know what they are, know how to use them, all this kind of shit. For high school kids, it seems totally reasonable to me. And I have to say again, I totally agree with you guys about the criticism of having the drag queen there. Right? I don't like drag queens at all. I think it's disgusting. I think you guys thought I was joking when I said it's like blackface for like women, but that's actually what it is. I absolutely believe that's what it is, and I think that celebrating it is kind of gross. Now, secondly,
the drag queen.
Yeah, hold on. So I agree that was a fuck up on their part. They shouldn't have done this. Right?
It's not a fuck up.
But
if it's intentional.
Yeah, it's intentional. They intentionally.
Yeah,
did it.
Obviously there's some like political ideological bent to the school, to the administration, probably to the parents that are sending their kids there, and they're totally okay with their children being indoctrinated toward like lefty politics. Sure, I absolutely believe that. But so what I'm talking about specifically is the appropriation is the approach to sexual education, right? And it seems, aside from having the drag queen there, it really doesn't seem like they did anything that wrong.
But can I ask you a question, Doobie?
Hey, Bilbo. There's no reason.
So let me
hold on a second.
Let me say this real quick.
Bilbo, shut up. Bilbo, there's no reason to attack a person further. Wait, okay? Let's knock that off. But Bilbo, you can ask Doobie if you want Doobie a question, and then we'll go to Scott.
Okay, I formally apologize to you, Joe, for the comment on your weight.
I'm sorry, I'll do it again.
Doobie, I would ask you. So you say that the drag queen crosses a line. I'm not clear on why that is. I don't understand why having. So you're okay with the dildos and the butt plugs and stuff like that, but you draw the line at teaching. If there was ropes there and handcuffs, would that be crossing a line, or is that fine?
And that might be okay depending on the context, right? So if they say, hey, some people are into this kind of stuff, here's how you do it responsibly, right? Don't use these kind of ropes, don't use these kind of handcuffs because you could hurt yourselves, hurt each other, whatever.
So earlier,
the reason the drag queen thing is crossing the line for me is because I think I agree with Scott on that point, that I think it does indicate that there is some ideological grooming that's happening here within the school, and I don't think that children should be groomed ideologically in this way, especially not in a way that normalizes something as disgusting as drag, right? Which is again female blackface.
So Doobie, let me walk you through something real quick. If I go to Lowe's and I buy a hammer, is that a problem?
Yeah, of course it is.
Okay, someone that you trust, okay, goes to Lowe's and buys a hammer.
Okay. Yeah, it's not a problem. Okay, you can buy a hammer too. It's fine.
Right. Now, let's say that person buys a hammer, some rope, lye, a shovel, condoms, lighter fluid, duct tape, and zip.
Do they have condoms at Lowe's?
You'd be surprised.
Right?
They don't have condoms.
So,
I think they do actually.
They don't have condoms at Lowe's.
Right. So
I'm pretty sure they.
Would you be suspicious? Would you think, hey, there? And let's also say, for example, this person happens to match the description of someone in the area that is reportedly kidnapping people.
Okay.
Would you maybe want to look into that? Would you maybe be like, we should do something about that?
Yeah, sure.
Right. That's the problem, is when you isolate it down to like just the dildos or just this. What you're saying is it's not a problem that they buy a hammer at Lowe's. It's like, no, we're not talking about the hammer at Lowe's. We're talking about what you when you put all of the pieces of the puzzle together, you can clearly see this education model is political indoctrination and not talking about
but I agree with you about that.
Ed.
Yeah,
right,
so
one thing that crosses the line. It's
hold on, but Scott, to be clear though,
clearly shows that this is a Freirean model of education.
Yeah, but Scott, see, I agree with you about that, though, right? But what I don't agree with, because it sounded like before. So let's say this wasn't a place that is pushing some like political indoctrination onto these kids, right? That they just want to educate them about how to use these things, lube versus spit, dildos, etc. Right? They would, and these are high school kids we're talking about. Like it sounded like you'd still be against that, even without the political indoctrination.
No, like I said, if you're giving out facts, right, that help towards the safety.
But can the sex toys be there?
And the parents' consent, right? That's not a problem. No, when you're asking, but can the sex toys be there? What you're saying is, can I buy a hammer at Lowe's? Right? You're not taking the full scope.
Yeah, but you can buy a hammer without. Hold on, but you can buy a hammer and not be like a murderer or whatever, right? So yeah,
exactly.
We're buying the hammer, but we're not doing all the other shit.
You can also buy a hammer and rope and lye and a shovel and zip ties and duct tape and condoms and lighter fluid and not be someone that's planning to kidnap people and like bury their bodies. But you start seeing enough evidence. You get but if you buy all of those things, all of a sudden we're like, hey, somebody's kidnapping people and burying bodies in the woods. We should investigate this shit.
Yeah, right? I'd agree with that, right? So all I'm advocating for is buying the hammer. I don't think they should be doing all the other stuff.
Right, that's the problem. When you start isolating these things and talking about how in isolation they're not specifically a problem, you're not actually looking at what's occurring. And what's occurring is political indoctrination to create antagonists of the children.
Okay, but more importantly, it's also GSU. More importantly, it's also the selling almost of paraphilia to children. I feel like that's the more important conversation here. If you start showing things that are for sexual pleasure to children, I feel like they're going to be more likely to use them.
That's called a generative theme. That's right. And that's exactly why they're doing it too.
If I can clarify, Johnny Scarlett,
yes.
Under no context, like let's say at 17 years old, end of high school, like sex ed should never be taught in the context of like pleasure. It's just like purely like anatomical type of education.
I'm essentially for that. Yes, an educational environment is not going to be something wherein I would accept the selling is not a good word, but it's the only one I can come up with the display of things that the child may not be, or the 17-year-old or whatever, they may not be into that sort of thing. And then all of a sudden you have a situation where, even with what Doobie was saying, where you bring in maybe handcuffs or something like that, like that's, children are very impressionable. And I think that could unlock something that may not have otherwise been unlocked.
Yeah, we all understand like power dynamics and what authoritative forces can do to coerce children. So the idea of constructing like this under the guise of sex education, when it's like a lot of people have said sexual indoctrination, is disgusting. The fact that y'all act like that's not clear is quite bizarre to me. And
but again, you would agree though that like you still need to understand what certain things are. But I guess what are you trying to say? Like they shouldn't exist at all, and whether it be pictorial or otherwise, like. I'm trying to see where
I'm saying that I don't think there needs to be a gratification of sex to have sex education. And I thought we were at a space where almost the entire world.
Wait, you cut off halfway. What did you say the first? I heard grata and you dropped out.
I don't think there needs to be like sexual like sexual gratification, like
gotcha.
Attempting to enjoy sex in order to have sexual education. And I thought we all understood this and knew this, and like we don't want to present. Well, we shouldn't want to present some sexual lifestyle as potentially better than another, right? Our goal is, like everybody's been saying, it's, hey, we'll give out the information about what sex is, the dangers of sex, and then where they go off to develop from there is what happens to them. And like this whole thing of Doobie saying like they're having sex, so everything
sorry, Joe Lewis, I just want to clarify this. GSU Gam, it seems like you're like very much opposed to the word you use, like indoctrination. Isn't like informing dangers indoctrination as well?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Not in the context of the word, come on.
Well, so that's what I'm trying to understand. His like
I didn't hear what you said.
Yes, I am.
You're not trying to understand it by like using the word indoctrination
Well,
to mean that any form of
Don't
socialization
tell me what
or
I do or don't
facts
understand,
given.
Scott. Like,
Indoctrinated him into
don't-
I know that you're
don't
not that
try.
stupid.
Let
That's
Corey
why I'm
fight
saying
with
no, you're
Gambit,
not.
God damn it.
What he
That-
asked.
And
Corey
yes, I'm
fight with
asking him
Gambit.
the question in terms of like what is the context in which he like. So to go back to my original phrasing, it seems like you are against, as the word you used, you couldn't use the word explicitly, like indoctrination. Okay.
Yes, I did. For sure.
And there, so I'm trying to understand how you understand indoctrination, where it's like, okay, you're against indoctrination, but then you say you're okay with like informing of the dangers of sex. So like how do you? I'm trying to understand how do you
What-
parse those two in terms of like why is informing dangers not indoctrination, but informing about maybe whatever that there may be some sort of pleasurable aspect to sex. That is indoctrination.
Yeah, you used 1,000 words. Okay. So when I specifically was talking about indoctrination, it was the comparison of one type of sex versus another. And like I said, I thought it was very clear. But like I said, I don't think we should be in the habit of saying of trying to present one form of sex as more gratifying than another.
Can I ask
And
another
that's the
question?
indoctrination.
So let me.
I actually want to jump in here. So
Okay.
like, I'll go farther. Right. So our friend Corey already beat me to it. Right. Great minds. But I think that we should actually consider, especially for later years in high school, right? Talk about sex for pleasure. Like, actually do that. I think that's the thing that we should consider making happen. That's not saying, hey, go out and have sex, but when you are doing this, right, you should, part of being a good sexual partner is providing for your partner in different
So of
ways,
course.
right?
Cringe.
Ways that you consent with, right? So of course,
So
you
hold
do
on,
know
Brian.
about that. Hold on. Let me get this out there,
Okay,
right?
I just want to ask you a question next.
Okay, sure. Like heterosexual men. So there was a study on who orgasms, right? Heterosexual men report that they usually or always orgasm 95% of the time when they're sexually intimate. Gay men reported having orgasm 89% of the time, with bisexual men following up close behind at 88% of the time. As for women, lesbians reported that they orgasm 86% of the time. So it's all bunched up together until, of course, we get to straight women who have orgasms at 65% of the time. Straight women have orgasms at a smaller rate than everyone else. That's because this information is not getting out. So it would
Well,
be
come on. Like sometimes you just make a deposit and you go to bed. Like it's not a big.
I want to ask him a question first. Let him finish.
But
Let him finish.
like, hold on, and don't worry, I will answer you. But like, it is. I think that for a society, like, we should decide what the point of sex ed is here. And clearly within this panel we have wildly differing ideas of what that should be, but I'll put it forward that not only should we be teaching safe sex, we should absolutely be teaching safe sex. Not only should we expand that past like just like condom and dental dam, because kids are doing more than those things. So we should at least give some sort of basic idea, right, of some other practices. But I'm willing to like negotiate where that line is. And then lastly, we should yes, introduce in the later years sex for pleasure. Like, this is what you do for your partner. That's an important part of being a sexual adult. Okay,
Why?
go ahead.
Yeah, so I feel like anybody who wants,
yeah,
I feel like anybody who wants
why?
to,
Okay, just ask your girlfriend. Go ahead, Jish.
Damn, he
I
said
feel
your
like-
girlfriend drives. That's crazy.
Hold on.
No, I mean,
I have no
just
idea.
why?
Wait,
would if
no,
I
no,
had-
Why should we teach kids about pleasure? and sex?
That's what I'm about to ask. But hold on. But so, Brian, so I feel strongly that anyone who wants to teach kids about sexual gratification is at least okay with pedophilia, for sure, without a question. Why are we using the school system as a like societal apparatus to teach people on how to enjoy sex? This can be like first off, I think you've said that we want to discourage kids from having sex, or at least not take a position on this. Whether they go off to have sex or not is their own thing, and we would hope that they don't. But if they do, they do it. So, bringing into our school system this mandatory education that everyone will have to undergo, rather than those that are seeking this potentially even in adulthood, why is that not a better space for this? Why do you feel like our school system should teach this to kids? What's the goal of that?
I will absolutely answer that question after I say, guys, hey, thank you for the hype train that's going on now.
Oh, Jesus
Thank
Christ.
you, Mythos, for helping out. It's like there's a lot of scrolling here. My fucking feed isn't working, so I don't know what everyone did. Desperado Sensei is another person. Philip Polaria, thank you for resubbing. And there might be someone else. If I'm missing you, I apologize. Enter news. It's like chat is scrolling by really fucking fast. But guys, we're at level 2 hype train. 0% down, 100% left. Help us get to a level 3 hype train, guys. If we want to have more of these conversations, these spicy conversations, well, you'll either agree with me because you're a genius, or you'll disagree with me because you need to be guided. Then support the channel. Sub to the channel, give bits or give subs. That's how I power this. Use your Prime Gaming Amazon Prime for 1 free sub. Hey, DB gifting 20 subs. Thank you, DB. DB wants me to shut the fuck up and get back to it, so I'm going to do that. DB, I see your hand up. So I'm going to answer his question, then I'll go to you, DB, okay?
To make sure I put a point on it, because I wanted to make sure I ask a specific question. Why are we... Yeah, go ahead. Go. I don't understand why we're interested in the sexual gratification of minors when we say that we don't want these things. Why wouldn't we be more interested in this in adults? Because we know that this type of content is going to be encouraging in some way. Because I think you agree that if you tell people, hey, this is great, this is good, blah, 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 if you're an authoritative force, in some way you're coercing them to display said behavior. So given all of the negative ramifications of this, why would we use our school system, which we talk about education and how we need all this other shit? Why would we use it for this?
Okay, yeah. One, because the information is not getting out. Right? You could say maybe this should be a college course, but not everyone goes to college. And blue collar women deserve orgasms too. Call me. But I think that, I think that it doesn't have to be mandatory. I never said it had to be mandatory. I think it could be an opt-out thing if there are parents like yourself who would be uncomfortable with their kid learning this type of thing. Okay, sure. I'm willing to bite that. But I think that it's just a purpose of schooling is to create well-rounded adults. I mean, in this country, it's more like worker bees, but still, I think it should be to create well-rounded adults. And if there is a gap in the general knowledge of the population of the important aspect of life, like if it was government, well, yeah, we should have more civics classes. And if it's sex education, clearly, as the stats show, then we should be talking about that. And when it comes to pleasure is an important part. It's an important part of like forming relationships and keeping relationships, right? Like I think you would acknowledge that. We talk about all other aspects of those relationships, at least now in school.
Yeah, so
then we should be talking about pleasure. I think that's
reasonable. So when it comes to
we're
pleasure,
at level, and you can talk as soon as level 4 hype train, 25% done, 75% left. Please help us get to a level 5 hype train. We were moving along. A bunch of people have been helping out. I can't. Because I'm doing this right now, I can't shout you all out, but I love you all. Thank you so much. Consider helping out the channel so we can continue on with the content. If you're loving this, you're hating this, or anything, but making you feel emotions help us get to a level 5 hype train. Subs to the channel, give bits or give subs. Thanks to everyone who helped out so far. 2.5 minutes up the clock. Go ahead, GSU Gambit, and then Doobie.
Yeah, and so then, people find pleasure from all types of things. There's a extreme majority of people who partake in drugs for pleasure.
This is so fucking
Schools
gross.
also teach how to properly use cocaine, because a lot of people, die from cocaine because they aren't using it correctly and they aren't getting it from the right source. So like, where does this stop when we delve into the realm of this thing can be pleasurable, so I want to put it into the school apparatus? Where does that stop?
Sure, I would say that bodily harm is a good thing. In fact, I want to avoid them from getting bodily harm.
Can I expand on that?
Where if you want to do that
quickly, I'm just gonna say,
help us out.
Prime guy thinks that they're his children.
No,
not
can I just want to add on.
Before you add on, I want to make sure I understand what Prime has said thus far. So you're saying that all of these pleasure type things, we should just teach safety on them, and they should be included in school.
So I can address that.
I
can
so I do want to teach safety.
So Prime.
You literally just said that. Shut up.
No, Prime. So there's a safe way to do cocaine.
Okay, so I can address that. So
but I'm asking Prime.
Yeah, I just want to tack on something, because this might be where the fundamental difference lies in terms of Prime brought in sex is, let's say, part of a healthy, well, for some people, part of a relationship, part of some sort of healthy relationship. And I would ask the question: Is cocaine use part of a healthy, functioning healthy relationship? think that might
It
be
could
the and what is the
There's
You
some
can ask
circles
Whitney
that
Houston.
and Hollywood
Ask
is
Whitney.
well,
yes.
yeah. Well, so in terms of like the direction you want to go, do you want like more relationships involving cocaine and heroin and crystal meth, or not? And
Do we
so
want more?
I
Do we want more
really-
child
It's real
sex?
simple. It's real
Oh,
simple.
You want more child sex?
It's
If you're
it's
gonna
real
make
simple.
that analogy, hold on,
GSU
I
Gambit.
want him to say yes because I think his answer is yes. So you want more pleasurable child sex, Corey? Is that what you're saying?
I want informed adult sex. Yes.
No, we're not talking about
GSU
adults.
Gambit.
Hang on,
GSU
talking about
Gambit.
adults.
GSU Gambit. So it's real simple, right? They're doing presumably, if we don't have any bad intentions in what they're saying, right? They're doing a utilitarian calculus about what creates a well-rounded person, right? And so this means that if more people are happy, then we should teach that to them. And so by their very own logic, it is really important that we teach them the values of Christ, our Lord and Savior, because the research clearly shows that people, and I know I'm stealing this from earlier, but it's true, right? The research clearly shows that people that follow Christ and go to church regularly are happier and healthier, more well-rounded individuals. And so if there's no lines here about what's ethical or unethical,
But that's
so
not
long
child
as
sex,
it
so they're
creates
not
a
gonna support it.
no, so long as it increases their ability to be involved in the community and makes them, and on top of that, research also shows that married women have the best sex lives as opposed to unmarried single women. That despite being able to have sexual liberation, it's they have more orgasms and a more pleasurable experience when they're married. So what Prime wants to teach them is that you
5%
have
more.
to follow Christ, and not only must you follow Christ, it's also really important that you understand the benefits of being married, and that being single is going to reduce your orgasms, ladies. So make sure you marry good Christian men, right?
All right, Gambit.
Okay,
I have a question for you. I have a
so-
question for you,
okay.
Gambit. Hold on. Wait. Can I
Wait,
ask you a question?
Prime
So, hold on, no.
Oh, you're
I
gonna
did
go for it, Brian.
say Doobie would get a shot, and it's
Sure thing.
5% more orgasms when the women are married. But go
It's
ahead.
still. But hold on, wait, Prime. Do you
Can I
want to
go after all
explain
this
why?
this bullshit?
Hold
Brian?
on, Prime. Do you want to explain why there seems to be research that shows that Christianity makes for more happier and more pleasured people, and why you would be against that, but you'd be for the
I would
sexual
like
liberation of kids?
I would like to see that research, and I can look. I will promise. I will.
This is
Don't worry.
true.
I'm not. No. I'm not running away from this question. I would love to engage with you on this, but like I have to move on. But let's do that. I want to talk about that. Doobie, and then Lactoid, and then Joe.
So I think that you guys touched on something extremely important. You guys keep asking like why should this be taught in schools, right? Like our educational institution. And I think that like a lot of the problems that we have as a country come like not really from poverty or from like bad influences. I think they come from like personal like etiquette. Right? And I think that etiquette's like seen often as like a pretty like small insignificant thing. If you want to send your kid to like etiquette school, costs you like thousands of dollars, in some cases like tens of thousands of dollars to do that. But I think that etiquette's like, I think it's pretty vital, right? It's a pretty vital tool that helps shape young people into like responsible, respectful members of society. I think that without proper etiquette, people start to like struggle about how to like navigate social situations, which leads to things like the incel epidemic. They struggle with building like meaningful relationships with other people. I think that the benefits of etiquette go like way beyond just being like polite and well-mannered. I think it helps foster a sense of empathy and understanding toward other people. I think that it teaches young people to consider the feelings and needs of those around them, and to act with consideration and kindness, and to respect the non-aggression principle, Scott. I think that in a world that's becoming increasingly divisive and polarizing, I think the ability to communicate with people and to connect with people is more important than ever before. That teaching etiquette it helps bridge the gap between people of different backgrounds and perspectives. I think it promotes mutual respect and understanding. And without these skills, our society risks becoming fractured and unhealthy. I think furthermore, etiquette's not just a personal trait, right? It's a professional trait as well, right? Something that I really struggled to learn as I became a business person. I think that as our students are like our future workforce, they're going to be judged not just on their skills and qualifications, but also on their ability to interact with their colleagues and clients in a respectful and professional way. By teaching etiquette in high school, we're setting our students up for success. right? In their future careers and their future relationships, and all of these successes leads to the betterment of our society, right? So it's not just about like, hey, we need to teach pleasure. It's, hey, we need to teach people to respect their partners, to respect the needs of their partners emotionally, mentally, and sexually. Yeah, so part of that is going to be teaching them why it's important to like take care of your partner when you're having sex. Unless you're a fuckboy and you just want to make a deposit and go home. Like otherwise, I think it's extremely important.
So we'll go to Lactoid and Joe. Just make sure you write down that question so you don't forget it. I do want to engage with it. Lactoid.
3 good points. The first point, not everyone is entitled to an orgasm. In fact, nobody is entitled to an orgasm. That is actual incel shit, right? If you want an orgasm as a straight woman, go find yourself go find yourself a real man who actually cares enough how to make that happen when they are an adult. Okay, it's not that hard to find that information when you're an adult. There's no reason why we have to be teaching that to children. And this idea that some people might not orgasm, well, sorry, boo-hoo. You're not entitled to an orgasm from me. In fact, that is degrading to me as a man, and that's reducing me to a sex object, which I take incredible animosity towards. I am worth more than just my penis. I've got a lot more to offer the world. Okay, that's the first thing. It's very
well, like 2% your penis, the rest of your law degree. Go ahead.
Look, the second point is I want to follow a little bit on GSU's like line of train of thought here, because I think it's almost impossible to deny. Encouraging pleasurable sex to minors is indistinguishable from encouraging sex. When you encourage sex among minors, you are by definition sexualizing those children. And we can talk about the studies on this. There's, when we do these classes, we should not be encouraging people to be promiscuous or engaging in a whole bunch of different sex acts. We should be discouraging sex among minors whenever we can. And we could reluctantly teach kids how to engage in this behavior in ways that doesn't cause them serious harm. What we should be encouraging, and what studies that I've seen seem to indicate are actually like beneficial long-term for terms of like long-term happiness, are abstinence, especially when you're young, very low or one sexual partner, hopefully until marriage, and monogamy once you do get married or once you find that one person. We can fight on the studies on that, but that's the stuff that I've seen. And especially when it comes to like the non-happiness or the non-direct happiness factors that we're talking about here, like STD transmission rates, kids out of wedlock, teenage pregnancy rates, like all these things that are incredibly harmful and disruptive to somebody's life. That's a real risk. And that's a risk that we engage in whenever we're teaching kids how to have pleasurable sex, because, I fucked because you told me it was pleasurable. Well, now you're pregnant at 17. Like, what's your life going to be like now? It's not a good thing to encourage people to do.
Lactoid, you're wrong, right? Like, your position is almost as value-laden as Prime Kai's is, right?
Yeah, I have value.
Value-laden on a panel.
Right, and if you want to choose... Yeah, and if you want to choose to teach your children certain values, teach your children those values. The role of a public education system, which is already theft, right? And if we're going to engage in that, is not to posit any values, right? You don't say that you should be engaging in pleasurable sex and try and fucking encourage kids to have sex. That's creepy pedo shit. And you also don't tell children be abstinent and you shouldn't do all of these things, because those are values as well. That's the parent's job. What your job is in proper sex education is these are what boundaries are. If you're hurt, these are the things. Like you teach girls things like, hey, if you're raped, you should get a rape kit done, right? Because that can preserve evidence so that you can find the person that abused you. Don't immediately take a shower just because you feel dirty. You need to make sure that you preserve evidence, because you're going to want that justice. These are the types of things you teach them, how to engage with protecting themselves and what is dangerous and how to avoid those dangers, which includes teen pregnancy and STDs.
Yeah, wait. I want to ask you this question.
Yeah, but I feel like...
Fabian, hold on, wait. This is really simple. So, Fabian, you've talked about teaching the harms and teaching protection. Abstinence in that way is that type of protection, or a way to abstain away from the harm?
No. He did not say teach them the effectiveness or efficacy of abstinence. Which, by the way, abstinence is 100% efficacious if you do it. Except it's one of the lowest efficacious things because the kids don't do it, right?
No,
but nevertheless,
Wait.
There's a difference between teaching.
So kids also don't use condoms just because we teach them condoms, right?
Yeah,
so
but-
the efficaciousness isn't what you're taking problem with. So what I'm asking you is,
No, it is.
Are you?
But-
No. Are you okay with mentioning that this is a way to abstain from harm? You're just
That's
not okay with
totally
saying that this is the value. I'm asking you the
Right,
question.
right,
I'm
you're
letting you
right.
clarify.
Yes, Lactoid said we should be teaching them to not engage in sex. Right.
Let's ignore what he said.
Right. Well, right. But that's what I'm saying. There's a substantive difference between giving them a value and saying you should do this with your body and your life. Right. That fucks kids up. Right. Because like we don't know what kind of home people come from. We don't want to introduce shame. What we want to introduce is facts about safety and about boundaries and about how they can use systems to protect themselves. And it's the same thing when you teach them pleasure. That's fucking creepy.
So hold on, Fabian. I just want to make sure
That's
I'm understanding. So you would be perfectly okay with somebody saying abstinence is the best and most efficacious way to avoid all of these dangers?
If you do it, yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's
Can I
go to
respond
Joe
to-
and then Johnny.
Can I respond to
Uh,
Scott's point real quick?
Okay, yeah, because you got did interrupted, but then we got to move on because guys, we
I
got
know,
a little bit
fair
of time
enough.
left.
That's fair enough. Scott, I mean, when I'm talking about like encouraging abstinence, I mean, I'm talking about doing it sort of in the way GSU is talking about. So yeah, like, look, here's all these risks and here's how you avoid them. And to be honest with you, like maybe it is somewhat of a value thing, but I think we should be teaching children to not engage in this. We should be saying, here's all the risks, here's why you shouldn't engage in it. But like, we're an authoritative figure in your life. Kids don't fuck, and because we don't want kids fucking. And I know you agree with that. So
Right. But the
Okay,
problem
so-
is
sorry, sorry, we
it's
got-
not a private
we gotta-
school.
I got a limited amount of time here, so we're gonna move on. So Joe, Johnny, Doobie.
Yeah, so again, I just kind of want to see where you're at on this. So we're just let's do a little thought experiment. We haven't done these in a while, so this will be fun.
We gotta,
Oh, boy.
So
we
the
gotta stop and
context
let
is we are in a high
the
school
Dumbos
level
talk.
classroom. The grade is grade 12, and they're talking about safe sex practices. We know that for lubricant, using saliva is insufficient and can lead to things including, but not excluding, sexually transmitted infections, UTIs, and other things. Another example of proper practice, if you're looking to not give your partner a yeast infection, is to urinate or shower before and after sex. Doing both is ideal. Now, one of the alternatives, if a student asks, what is an alternative that I can use or that we should use, if not saliva, what would be the appropriate contextual answer in your opinion?
I would say that I wouldn't journey into the conversation over trying to enhance teenage sex. That's what I would say. And I would say that
you wouldn't. Okay, go for it, sorry.
Yeah, so I don't think I'd engage in, well, maybe. No, I don't think I would. No, I wouldn't engage in, like, how do we make your sex better? I would say
So-
these are some of the dangers that you listed. And I don't even know if I'd be that detailed, but yeah. And that's how
I
I
mean,
sidestep that.
Sure, but then you're let's say in this let's load it up. You're a physical education teacher. You're tasked to talk about this thing, and one of the things that we know is a best practice is lubricant over saliva. So you're saying that you wouldn't articulate that lubricant is a better material to use than saliva,
I don't think so.
knowing
Yeah, I don't
knowing the
think
health
so at all.
risks that saliva causes.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Mentioned with condom use, you seem to be pro condom use, but you want to leave out any sort of lubrication talk.
Maybe, I don't know. This is a hard question. Maybe I would. I don't know.
Actually
Condoms
leads into
not
what I was
lube.
about to
Great.
say.
No, I'm trying to think through this real time. Maybe,
Yeah, I got you.
Jesus, maybe so. But I feel like this is from the slippery slope of the nonsense, and I'm trying
Because
so
of
I'm
all the
trying to
lube.
avoid-
Yeah, exactly.
It's
You
all
read
about
between crimes.
Jesus Christ.
I'm trying to avoid things that might come next, and I should answer your question that's on the floor now. I think the presentation of lube and what it's created for may be okay in certain contexts,
Sure.
but I'd have to understand where you're about
Sure.
to go next.
So that's kind of the point that I was like kind of knocking at, is that those who are in these fields of sex education, they're not saying that you ought to use lube for pleasure. That's just a byproduct. You don't have to explore that. You can explore that this is a thing that is used for healthy sex practices. It has other benefits, and we don't need to get into that class because like it's just a waste of time. But we can say that, hey, if you are put into a sexual environment, don't use spit. That's chaotic.
So,
I mean, I wouldn't say chaotic,
so-
but it's
So I want to say that this is demonstrably different from the topic that we're having, right? Because we've been talking about giving kids sex toys in the context is of using lube with sex toys and all of that shit. It wasn't
Well-
just general, there's two people, hey, I could use spit or lube and what might be best in that situation. It's involving all the other things with sex toys and blah blah blah. So it's kind of like what Fabian said.
Sure,
Y'all
but not to
are
cut you off, not
focusing-
to I'm not gonna let you slide from this, because in the clip in question, it talked about lube versus spit in the clip in question.
with the sex toys though.
No,
if you
that was
listen
a
to
cut. That was a cut in the video.
we could re-listen to it.
Okay. Well, we'll have to
Just
look at it.
for the
This
record,
is
that's not.
leading into
Just so
if you guys
just for the record,
would allow
just for the
me
record, that's
to-
not true. There are sex education. There is sex education literature on the need for the emphasis of pleasure, right? So like, let's not pretend that like all of the pedagogy here is completely sterile.
I don't
and that
know
they're
if I
not
ever
that there's not
implied
that there's not research specifically
Jesus,
focusing
nigga
on
practice talking.
the need
Ooh.
for the pleasure of sex in sex
Okay,
education.
cool.
Yeah,
Thanks.
yeah,
What are you trying to say,
yeah.
John?
Okay.
Johnny, and then Dibby,
Wonderful.
please.
Thank you so much. Okay, this is just leading into what I wanted to say, and so I thought it was an appropriate time to say it. This is an excellent example where I would like to give a real world example of how you can cross into what is sexual pleasure while still explicitly staying in the realm of education and biology, okay? There is a statistic that says that approximately only 18% of people with vaginas can orgasm without a
Clitoral stimulation.
without clitoral stimulation. Okay, this is something that can be taught in the context and be helpful biologically and for healthy sex practices without explicitly going for this is what feels best for people. This is where I'm agreeing with you, Gambit, is that this is a place where this sex ed class that we're imagining is a place where you are going to have these really fine lines, but you can still go into a more educational slant. And it is important to understand that healthy sex and advocating healthy sex is not always explicitly advocating for something that is this is what sex is best to have. This is how you should have sex. And that's where I'm agreeing with you is that we shouldn't be telling kids how to have sex. We should be giving them options, and we should be giving them the healthy alternatives to things. So for instance, with the lube thing, that's a basic biological function. Your body should be lubricating itself. However, if it doesn't do that appropriately, you can use this instead. That's a very mechanical, educational way of presenting this type of information.
Let's go to Tubi, then Corey, then Bilbo.
I think that by ignoring the fact that sex can and should be a source of pleasure for individuals, I think we're actually doing a disservice to our students. I think we're failing to recognize and acknowledge the full range of human experiences and desires, and perpetuating harmful myths about and stereotypes about sexuality. I think that if your goal is to provide young people with accurate and comprehensive information about sex, that should obviously include educating them about consent, communication, and the importance of respecting boundaries. But I think it also means providing them with the tools and resources they need to explore and express their own sexuality in a healthy and safe manner. I think that ignoring the role of pleasure in human sexuality doesn't make it disappear. It just means that these young people are going to seek out that information and guidance from other sources that may not always have the best interests at heart, right? From people who might actually groom them, or fucked up porn websites. Right. So I think that by teaching high school students about sexual pleasure, we can empower them to make informed decisions, responsible decisions about their own bodies and relationships when they're out on their own. And I think given that our school system should prepare our young people to take on the world, the last time I checked, that world includes lots of casual sex. I think the opposition to this seems like totally wrapped up in prudish, traditionalist cultural values that we should definitely leave in the past. I think it just seems.
Dibby, hold on. I got to add to that. Then I'm going to go to Corey and Bilbo. But porn. You brought up something I can't believe I forgot. It usually never leaves my mind. But porn. Kids, they learn through porn, unfortunately, because we don't teach them about.
Yeah, there's a ton of studies on.
and you see I mean kids like the women on screen, right? They scream when they have a very large object inside of them over and over again, so it seems like that's the best thing to do. Like, they get the wrong idea and they might hurt themselves or hurt their partners, and so it would be better if we taught them, okay, like, ignore that. We know you've seen it, right? No judgments, but ignore that shit. And these are basic tips to actually provide pleasure to your partner when you do that as an adult. Let's go to Corey, then Bilbo.
Yeah. So I don't want to engage with Gambit and Lactoid for a bit, but just to clarify your position, Lactoid, are you also sort of like the same sentiment where it's like, sex ed should never be taught in the context, or like pleasure should not be sort of included in the curriculum or any sort of aspect of pleasure?
Yeah, I'd be, yeah, basically that. Also, I would take harsher measures to prevent children from watching pornography as well.
Okay. I'm not going to tackle. So leading into that, and it seems like that's your sentiment as well. So when it comes to like the curriculum, and let's say when it comes to, let's say the basic anatomy, should, when it comes to, breaking down reproductive, organs, should should it be taught that the clitoris exists?
I'm sure it's anatomy. Yeah.
But what if they ask what is it for?
What is it
what's
for?
What's its function?
So when you say like what's its function, I think that's almost sort of like a leading question, because the function, you can say that like it has nerves, but when you say what's the function, you're implying that we should be teaching them to do something with it. And I'm not.
I mean, the function is the female orgasm. That's a very simple and clinical explanation. Like, the function is the female orgasm.
That's too pleasurable, though. We don't want to encourage
That's not too
So you
pleasurable.
can
I think
teach
this is a
about
leading
orgasms.
question on your part, Corey.
Yeah,
I mean,
Corey.
if a
You can teach
student
about
asks-
orgasms,
if
but you
student
can't
asks
teach
the
where they come
question-
from.
Hold on.
So
Come
this
on,
is where
Johnny, come on,
this is like where the
Johnny.
line
we
is.
can be honest here.
No,
Students will have
Lactoid,
questions.
What is that line?
This is like where the line needs to be drawn, right? There needs to be a very, and it's going to be difficult in certain situations. I agree, but the question is, what is the motive? What is the primary motivation of this lesson? Right? Is the primary motivation here to like educate somebody on like a fact-based, definitional reality, or is the intention here to like glorify or encourage a particular practice, right? That's the line that needs to be drawn. And so if we're saying like, yeah, like, hey kids, like fucking is real good, like it feels really good, people do it all the time for this, and here's how you make it feel extra good. You touch the hot button that makes it, you like, if you do that, that's fucked up, right? It's very clear what the purpose is, and it's very clear what the purpose is from this particular event that we're talking about, based on all the context that was said in the video, right? It was beyond just education, it was glorification. The educational aspect would be blowing up like a projector some a picture of like, one of those like, biology textbook pictures, and like, this is like what this part, this has like 38,000 nerve cells per square inch or whatever the fuck, and this is what its biological function is, and then this is what this happens. Oh, and this, if you engage in this particular activity, here's a list of STDs, here's information on these STDs, here's what pregnancy does to you, all that stuff. I think that's the responsible way of doing it. It sounds like when we're talking about teaching kids how to have pleasurable sex, we are very much like in the glorification realm.
And I think
what needs to be avoided.
So here's a fact.
Why are you running? Good question.
Just to add to this, I was called out. Corey said my name, so I get rights to talk. So I've been trying to figure out what the problem I have, because I agreed a lot, Johnny, with some of the things that you said, but I disagreed, and I was trying to figure out what it was. And I think the way you, Doobie, and Corey have defined healthy sex is what I actually would take issue with, because in the idea of healthy sex, you're bringing in pleasure as a part of that. And I think that speaks to the question that Corey asked Lactoid. And like, a part of this, yes, this is the biological function, but that doesn't mean that we need to go into all of the pleasure conversation. So I would say that your construct of healthy sex being something that sex education should teach, that's what I take issue with.
I at the very least think
again, we're running from this question, Lactoid. Like,
I at the very least think, one second, I was called out.
I answered pretty directly.
I at the very least think that we should teach children. We should teach children that sex should not feel bad. We should teach children that sex should not be harmful to them, and part of that is explaining what the basic functions of especially the female anatomy are for. And if we are teaching them in the context of that, then explaining what an orgasm is no longer something that is reaching out for them to say, hey, here's pleasurable sex.
So Johnny, would you teach virgin girls how to lose their virginity and how, like, if they
one thing
don't take it in certain strides, that these things could be harmful, right? Where does this stop? It's
Damn,
wild,
Gambit,
right?
that's a wild straw.
One thing that I would definitely teach is that your first sexual encounter does not have to be physically painful, and that is a myth. Yes.
Yeah.
No, the problem.
Bilbo, and then I'll go straight to you, Scott. But Bilbo's been waiting for like the longest, so I don't have to.
Also, how did I not answer the question? That's not the question. After them or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, I think everyone knows what South Park is, right? If I reference this, no one's going to be lost. Does everyone remember the South Park episode where I think it's Mrs. Garrison at the time is doing sex ed for the first graders, and she is teaching them how to use a condom, and it starts like a very normal class. No, not that clip. It starts like a very normal class, right? Saying this is a condom, you put it on your penis to have safe sex. And then he pulls out a banana and he says, okay, I'm going to demonstrate how a real woman puts on a condom. And he takes the condom out and he holds the banana in his hands. He puts the condom in his mouth and deep throats the fucking banana in front of the first graders. I don't know why we're talking about all of this like, oh, well, we're just talking about how to have sex with pleasure. Like, no, you invited a drag queen to come with a bunch of her favorite dildos and butt plugs and give them to the students and hee and giggle and talk about how cool it is to have queer sex. And it's all wrapped up in this very nice and pretty bow about, well, we're just trying to teach them how to be safe and how to be well-rounded individuals. It's not what school is for. School is not to give the full range of the human experience. That's not what school is for. Education is to give you the tools to be successful. Yes, really. Education is supposed to give you the knowledge and the tools to be successful out in the real world. Has nothing to do with whether or not you can fuck good.
And sex doesn't happen in the real world, of course.
That's not the range of human experience.
That's not what school's for.
Was doing in the
Not
real
what
world.
school's for.
Wait, hold on, Bilbo. So when you imagine like this class that they had, do you think that the drag queen was like giving the dildo the Gakak 9000 in front of all the kids in the classroom? Like, is that what you imagine what was happening?
No. I just mean
slobbering
like,
all over the fucking desk.
I just mean like there's a line, right? So
yeah,
like,
okay, but I don't know why it was important to bring up the South Park thing. Like, I'm sure that's not what was going on.
Because you're saying, well, we're just trying to teach them how to be safe while they have sex.
Yeah, that doesn't mean the teacher should be giving blowjobs to it. Like,
well, it doesn't mean we should have a fucking drag queen either. You agreed with me earlier.
I agree that the drag queen shouldn't have been there, but I think it's totally fine to teach high school students, especially like junior, senior year, about sex for pleasure and about healthy relationships. And yet, some of their healthy relationships out of school are going to include casual sex for pleasure. That's okay. Like, I don't understand why there's like this fucking like you guys are like hiding from this.
No, okay, this is the problem, is that parents have different values that they want to instill on their children. And when you're talking about sex education in private school, right, there are certain things that are obviously developmentally inappropriate. And then there are certain things where it's a gray area, and it is up to the guardian of the children to determine what is and isn't appropriate based upon their properties as an emergent adult, okay? Now, when you're talking about public education, this is an entirely different thing. We keep talking about, oh, well, certain facts, these are certain biological facts. But what facts you present are also value-laden. How you draw a curriculum and what facts you choose to talk about are also value-laden. So, for example, if I have a curriculum and I pull all the girls aside and I say, hey, girls, did you know there's a part of your anatomy known as the posterior fornix? And that if an object is forced past your cervix from the back end, it can actually hit what's known as the recto-uterine position or the recto-uterine pouch. And that this can actually stimulate different sexual experiences that you might find more pleasure. Well, this is obviously encouraging girls to put 12 inches in themselves, right? Because you got to force yourself past the fucking cervix, right? That biological fact has something to it that it's going to encourage, and it's up to the
putting
parents.
more pressure on men, right, Lactoid? Go ahead.
Right, and it's up to the parents to determine if that individual, if those facts, sterile though they may be, are worthy of presenting, and whether or not that's something safe. Now, the state's burden is to present an education for all. It is a trust because they tax you and they steal your money, and then they create public education. So it is their duty to do the minimum of introducing values and to only give you information for your safety. That information is not important for your safety. It's not important to tell girls about the posterior fornix and how they can stimulate the recto-uterine pouch. Despite the fact that's a very dry and sterile fact, it's not our duty to give them that information. And it's not the state's. But if a parent thinks that for whatever fucking reason, their children might engage in that type of stuff, and they go to fucking private school and they say, this exists and you can get stimulation, but here are some of the dangers, right? And they do it in a different way. That's fine at that private school.
Wait, unfortunately, this was a private school.
I mean,
this was a private school. In this example, I still disagree with all this shit happening at a private school. I don't think children can consent to this type of quote unquote education, which is really just grooming. But I don't think
it's not grooming. It's not grooming.
This was a private school, just FYI.
This wasn't a public school. It's political indoctrination, but nothing that was being done at this private school was an attempt to isolate the children from their parents and like love bomb the children and separate them from their parents' will. Their parents are all a bunch of woke weirdos.
It was sexualization.
You don't have to be separating them from their parents for it to be grooming.
Okay, but if that's the case, then there's no difference.
Your parents
between
can be
indoctrination
around
and
while
grooming.
kids are being groomed.
Grooming's just a worthless word at that point. If that's not,
it's always been a worthless word.
Grooming is
almost like indoctrination.
Yeah, right.
Grooming is like getting them to want to engage in sex more and potentially inserting yourself as the person that they might would have sex with. There's nothing to do with whether your parent is around and all this other.
But GSU, by that standard, wouldn't teaching them about like anatomy generally, wouldn't that also be grooming? Like teaching them that the clitoris exists, or that hey, there's nerves on the head of your dick, and it might feel good if you rub something against it. So these kids might go out and rub their dick. Like, isn't that also grooming?
You asked me the question, but you keep asking 1,000.
Well, I was adding more flavor to it.
Okay, yeah, I know. So there's a level of introducing a topic that I think, well, actually, now that I'm on the panel with y'all, I don't even know if this is true, but I thought there was a level of introducing a topic that we wouldn't consider grooming.
So we're okay with light grooming, basically.
Just telling somebody the biological facts. We don't look at it as grooming because there's nothing about that is introducing things that will probably make them more likely to want to do it. Versus when you add in all of this bullshit around.
Should we teach them about orgasms? Should we teach them that orgasms exist?
I think yes. I think you can have
Isn't that going to make these kids want to have orgasms?
No, not.
It's not. You teach them. Come on.
I don't think those things are intrinsically tied. No.
Well, that's. I asked you this question already.
And then
we can say cocaine exists, but that doesn't mean that all the kids are going to want to go try cocaine.
Yeah. So your standard for grooming is just like silly.
Increases their likelihood of trying cocaine because you're saying increases their likelihood of wanting to try sex. So no, just bringing these things up doesn't mean that it's tantamount to grooming.
Just so you know, it's 11:30 p.m. Eastern. Like we're on bonus time. If anyone needs to leave, that's okay. You just go ahead and do so. But if anyone wants, I know, Gish, I had to call you out.
I'm gonna stay till 11:45. I'm gonna stay till 11:45.
Joe.
I had nothing.
Okay.
I was on the phone. Sorry.
Okay, back to it.
So hold on, wait. So can Doobie answer that? So Doobie, wait. So you agree that just bringing up or introducing a topic does not mean you are increasing the likelihood that someone might engage. So would you say that if we had a DARE program or some shit, I don't know, that said, hey, we shouldn't engage in cocaine, merely mentioning cocaine, merely talking about the side effects or blah, blah, blah of cocaine, that doesn't create an environment where people are more likely to engage in cocaine? You agree with that, right?
Do you think that teaching people... Wait, hold on. I wouldn't agree with that. I wouldn't agree with that, actually.
I wasn't even going to let you answer it because I was going to assume you answered. Even if you were going to try to disagree.
I was going to... Hold on. I was saying...
Introducing what an orgasm is doesn't mean that we're...
No, hold on. But I was going to disagree with you. I think that teaching... Hold on. If we're being like specific, right? So we're talking about like orgasms. So the pleasurable part of sex, or the most pleasurable part of sex. Like... So if we were to teach children that, hey, if you do cocaine, there's a high associated with it, and you're going to have these side effects that feel positive. Right? Some of these kids are going to hear this and be like, oh, shit, that sounds pretty fucking cool. Or they're going to hear about mushrooms and LSD and be like, oh, shit, I want to see the fucking machine elves and the sacred geometry or whatever the fuck. I want to trip out, right? And they're going to go out and try fucking mushrooms. So I totally disagree with that. Right? So teaching them about the stuff and about the effects of the stuff it's absolutely going to make some of them want to go out and do it.
And also GSU, like I explicitly asked you earlier. This is why I asked that question, where it's like, in the curriculum, you seem to take issue with pleasure. Like, sex should not be taught anywhere, like, never tied to pleasure. But now it seems like you're okay. Like, you can talk about orgasm. You could talk about clitoris.
Wait. What we've consistently said, I think, is that we shouldn't teach ways that augment pleasure. We've not said that the idea of saying that. Yeah, we didn't. So I didn't get to chime in because Lactoid answered, but I agree with everything that Lactoid said, and nothing about what he said was encouraging of sexual pleasure. It was saying that this biological function is a part of pleasure.
Right.
So
Let me
those are two
elaborate
different
a little
things.
bit more, Corey. So to maybe this. So I when I was talking about how it depends on like that line, right, where if it's just fact or if it's glorification. Obviously, this is like a case-by-case basis. We take every single lesson or every single part of every lesson of the curriculum, and we decide what is the primary purpose of this or what is the primary outcome. So like, should we teach women that the clitoris exists, or men, or anybody, like that the clitoris exists? Sure, we can teach that it exists. But I'd be highly opposed to teaching different ways to stimulate it or to like reach, try to get somebody to some like level of pleasure. In the same way, I'd be highly opposed to like having a bunch of high schoolers, like high school girls, or maybe guys too. Like, we're gonna teach, like, lesson plan 1. Here's the best way to suck a dick, right? Because hey, sucking dick is good for pleasure, right? I mean, like, why? Like, there's obviously a difference. So I can teach you about a penis without teaching you how to suck it off. I can teach you about a clitoris without teaching you how to stimulate it, right? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, that's why I think I worded my question carefully in terms of like, should you just inform children about the existence of the clitoris, and like, what if they ask what's its function? And like,
I agree that you worded it. I agree that you worded it.
Well,
the
function is like up in the air. Depends what.
No, the clitoris has one function.
Hold on.
One particular purpose.
Wait. We agree that you worded it carefully, but we feel like the answer we gave you is not in contradiction with anything else that we've said. It seems like you're presenting this as if we've said something now that's contradictory to the way that he answered your question. What is that thing? Because I don't think it exists.
Yeah, TSU is talking about advocacy and advocating that these children do it, and then also simultaneously saying that this is a function, but not advocating the function.
Right. So when you're teaching people how to use butt plugs, the best way to gain pleasure from butt plugs, in my mind, that's equivalent to saying like, to teaching a high school girl, well, here's the best sucking technique to suck off a dick. It's wholly inappropriate.
Lactoid. Fantastic.
This is not inappropriate.
Wait, Corey. I want you to
highly inappropriate, dude.
No, I don't think so. I think if it's an elective course for like seniors, I think it's fine.
Doobie, please. I really want Corey to answer these 2 questions. So, Corey, 2 questions on the floor. 1, what contradiction did you see? But 2, I do also want to know, would you be in favor of sex education that teaches teenage girls the best way to suck dick? Go ahead.
So to answer that second question, I can please say no. So
thank God.
I
don't know why you even had
perceive
to ask that question.
I perceive a contradiction. I could be wrong, because like when you were talking, the message that I got from you, and that this might just be on my part misinterpretation, where it's like you pretty much like were essentially saying like, well, any sort associating any sexual act with pleasure, that is encouraging its use, that promotes sexual activity. And that's why I asked the question, well, okay, if that's sort of like your guiding principle, like you should never tie sex to pleasure because that encourages more sex.
You can weigh like there is a negative for tying pleasure to sex. You can weigh that negative with like how useful is like this information from a safety and health standpoint. And if the usefulness is like heavy enough, then I guess we teach it.
Hypothetically, you should never teach. It's not necessary to teach the existence of the clitoris. Like they just don't need to know that. It's just
That's
like
not
it could be a girl could be like,
no.
what the fuck is that? Like, do I have some weird like growth on me? Like
Exactly. That's absolutely valid, Lactoid. The misuse of the clitoris causes major health problems if someone doesn't physically know what it is.
Yeah, and that's why I asked the follow-up question of like if a child asks like what is its purpose or like what does it do?
What does it do?
And then he explained.
No, but here's the thing. All right, you're in a classroom, Lactoid, and you're going over the female reproductive system, and then you're at the point of the clitoris. You say it's like, and then like a student asks a question around the clitoris, saying, "Well, what is it used for?" Like it says in the textbook that it's just used for pleasure, but what does that mean? How would you answer that question as a teacher?
So I would say, the actual function of this is I guess it's a controversial question. It's up in
it's
up
for
in
pleasure,
the air.
but it's okay.
So you can, but when you're saying like it's for pleasure, that implies that sex is for pleasure. You're automatically making a value statement there when you say that.
Lactoid, there's an appropriate response to this question. That's a really interesting question. And what we teach in sex ed is just about the facts and dangers and
Talk to your
what is
parents.
decided by the curriculum. You should have a conversation with your parents about that. This is not the
I like
teacher's
that.
fucking place to answer that question.
It's very
boy.
simple to just
Yes.
introduce the idea, because you're already introducing the idea of the male
Yeah.
orgasm. You just introduce the idea of the female orgasm.
And-
You don't have to tell them all about it. You don't have to describe what an orgasm feels like. You don't have to advocate it. You simply say the base facts. And I'm not unsure why we're like dancing around the base
Well,
facts.
because
of
these
what
people
it's
don't
for.
these people don't know how these things work. So
Well,
like the at the end of the day, the answer to that question was the teacher would answer it to the best of their ability, but refer to, hey, if you want to know more about this, you should probably speak to a doctor or a health professional. This is like the purpose of what we're doing in this class. but
Fucking
here's some
sixth
more
grader's gonna go
information
talk to a
about it.
doctor? Like, no, go talk to your parents.
You're not gonna learn, like, you recommend where they can find
Yeah, you
additional
recommend their
information
parents.
about something. No, you recommend parents, health
What the
professionals.
parents have
people
a better-
appropriate-
Fair enough.
What
Fair
if
enough.
the parents have.
You're just
I don't
missing
know
it.
what
Gabby,
they
Gabby, you know this isn't the hill. You know this is
My
the
only
hill of the
my only
You
issue
know,
with
right,
that,
right.
my only
For sure.
issue
For
with
sure.
like the parents.
Let's go. Sorry, we got it. You gotta move on. Doobie, Bilbo, I think you put your hand up previously. Yeah, Doobie and Bilbo.
So I think that Lactoid, you're kind of missing the mark with the like we shouldn't teach high school girls to give blowjobs thing. I think
I
that
mean, he doesn't have sex
Position.
ed, so like he
We
doesn't know
already
what's
know
down there.
Lactoid.
So
Really
he's
quickly.
sticking it in, you don't
Yeah.
know what they're.
Lactoid's
So,
FG blowjob.
as somebody who's very pro blowjob, right? So I understand that giving and receiving a blowjob can be an enjoyable experience and a very relaxing experience for both parties, right? I think that there are many health benefits to this, like reducing stress and tension, improving circulation, reducing the risk of prostate cancer. I think that giving the act of giving a blowjob, it can also be like super rewarding and like a fulfilling experience because the person's like using their skills and techniques to like help another person feel more relaxed and rejuvenated. I think that teaching young men and women to give great blowjobs can actually like improve the quality of blowjobs in the future, and given that the future generation is going to need lots of good blowjobs, if we want to reduce the amount of like tension and stress in our society and prostate society prostate cancer in our society, I think it's absolutely important for the health of our nation. Right? So I think that like this is like the goal that I'm like reaching for. I think that what we're lacking in our society right now is connection, empathy, it's fucking humanity. Right. And so I think we need to accept like giving blowjobs and teaching men and women to give blowjobs that aren't fucking full of teeth and fucking spit and fucking like loogies and shit. That's an extremely important part of this prospect. And so I don't understand why you'd be against like
trolling.
I'm not trolling. I'm absolutely
Because I don't want
how many terrible fucking
I don't want
why does it need to be a gym teacher? You'd have a
you're
professional and
Doobie,
like why would it be a gym teacher?
Doobie, you're full of shit. I don't want fucking gym teachers getting bro jobs.
Why would it be a gym
from their
teacher?
fucking
Wait.
students.
Okay, so you
Doobie,
assume
would they bring-
you
would they
assume
bring
that
in, like,
teaching high school seniors to give blowjobs and lead to them being fucked by the gym teacher.
No, you don't.
It's ridiculous.
No, you're being fucking ridiculous. Talking about you pointing out the exact thing that I pointed out, which is that you're trying to use whatever data and statistics you can to subtly influence.
Yeah, I'm just
the
pointing to
minds
reality.
of
Yeah.
children. No, you're not pointing to.
No,
yeah,
I'm not. It's not a. I'm talking about like seniors in high school. They're so in a year they won't be children anymore. They'll be considered adults and they'll be let loose into our fucking society, giving terrible blowjobs to everybody, full of teeth and spit. Like it's not a good.
Pedo fuck. It is not your goddamn job.
Why does being okay with high school seniors learning about blowjobs make me a pedophile? You see how much you've watered down the fucking work?
Doobie, you're being a sick, disgusting fuck, and you know it, right?
Okay, can you explain why this is bad?
Yes, why is
I'm
it
not
bad to
trolling.
teach
I'm being totally serious with you.
Yes, you fucking are. No, you're not. You
Oh my
lying fucking sack of shit. You know that it's not a good idea.
Okay, I'm laughing a little bit because it's funny that you guys are so upset about this. But when the fucking discourse is about the Don't Say Gay bill, when we talked about third grade being a good starting point, I was serious about that. Apparently, you guys fucking weren't.
Stop, Doobie. you and I both know you're full of shit, and you're only saying things for
Oh my
engaging content. And you're not actually.
That's
being
not
genuine.
true. Okay, I think
If you
you
are
weren't being genuine
You're the
when we
smile
talked
queen.
about
You
the.
think-
Okay, I'm smiling because you guys are being fucking ridiculous. I think
No,
you guys are
you're
acting
being
like fucking
ridiculous,
prudes,
you
right?
sick
The reality
fuck.
is these
No, it's
men
not
and women are going to
prudes
give
to not
blowjobs
teach
anyway.
sex acts
So if
to
they're high
fucking
school
children.
seniors, I think it's totally reasonable to have an elective
No,
course
it's
that they can
not
take
totally
to
reasonable.
learn how
You
to have
fucking
sex.
pedo.
Like that's totally
You're
fine.
a fucking pedo.
Doobie.
If
Doobie.
you're
Okay,
being
okay,
genuine, you're a
which
fucking
part of
pedo.
what I
Like,
said
like,
indicates that
Doobie,
I'd like to
Doobie,
fuck these
I
high
have
school
to read.
seniors?
Doobie, why
I
are
have
you
to
You
read.
being
I
want
have to,
teachers.
Doobie?
You want
like,
teachers teaching
No, because like
sex
I
acts
gotta
in
restart
detail
stream
to
because y'all
children.
think it's
This is
reckless as fuck.
disgusting.
I'll be back. Y'all think it's reckless.
It's
as fuck.
disgusting.
All right.
Wait,
Thank you,
Fabian,
Joe.
why are you entertaining his obvious troll? Because
This is not an obvious. Can you
Because
just
I'm not
explain
letting
which
the
part of what I
audience
said
fucking
indicates
go.
that I want to fuck high school students?
Fabian, this is how we do this. Okay.
And Joe's the only
Is
one
anyone
technically
here-
violating
Hold on,
TLS right now
hold on,
by
hold on.
using racial
Fabian,
slurs to specific
Fabian,
individuals. It doesn't matter what your skin
Fabian,
color is. So Joe, you're
Fabian.
the one that actually violated
No,
TLS.
True.
Fabian, this is how we handle obvious trolling from Doobie. Does anyone here that doesn't have a frog face as their avatar support teaching how to give blowjobs to teenagers?
It's not uncommon that I'm the smartest person on the panel. That's totally that happens all the time.
I just want to ask. I want to ask a clarifying question though, Doobie.
Smartest
So
pedo in the room.
I would
think-
say.
I'm the
Wait,
least
wait,
lost in the
wait,
fucking
wait.
ideological sauce person on any panel.
I will-
Don't be trolled by him because he has a frog avatar.
I'm not
He can say
trolling. Oh, God.
anything. He can say anything. Does anyone
Okay,
here will address this if anyone here that's not a fucking frog says, "Hey, I think yes, we should teach teenage girls how to give better blowjobs." Does
Corey,
anyone here
Corey, you go
actually
first. And
say-
High school seniors, not just girls, men too.
Yeah, so I'm not necessarily, depending on how it's designed, I'm not against, as Doobie said, an elective expanded sex education like course that's elective, and it would depend on what the curriculum is. But in principle, I'm not
Somebody clip
necessarily against that.
specifically, I would.
All right, you are the smartest
I
pedo
guess-
in the fucking room because you're
Wait,
smarter than
let's
Corey.
say that-
everybody that might be pro this answer. We really so Prime. Go ahead, dude. Go ahead and say it. You go ahead. You support teenage girls, a course where teenage girls learn how to give better blowjobs. Go ahead and say it.
No, teenage boys, specifically teenage boys. No, I would, I would say that, like,
Damn, I didn't realize
this
Milo
is a part-
Yiannopoulos joined the fucking.
this is a part of the body that responds to oral stimulation. This is a common thing that adults do, right? A bad thing to do would be to apply teeth. It's a very sensitive area. Same with the clitoris. Keep your teeth away from it. Just use your lips, and then that'd be it.
Unless
There
they
you go.
ask.
Unless, okay, well, let me not go far.
What if they ask? No. Like Joe said, what if they ask, "Hey, what are some of the best techniques to make sure that this? You've taught me orgasms was great. How might I best
Having that as an elective class is fine.
That might be too far for me. That might be too far for me.
Oh,
God.
Wait,
They got you.
Doobie, I want to ask, right? So in the
real quick,
example, of the
real quick,
article,
and I won't
hold
scream.
on,
Real quick, I just
the
it's
example, we
a
had butt
one sentence
plugs.
statement. One simple statement. All right.
Why?
To anyone watching, real simple. To anyone watching, whether or not Doobie is trolling, Corey isn't. Okay? I've never seen a better advertisement to get your fucking kids out of these schools and make sure that they're in private school or
Make them
homeschool
very afraid of
and you know
sex.
what's going on.
Okay,
Okay.
Lightfoot, quickly, because I gotta go to Bilbo. He's been waiting.
Okay. Sorry, Bilbo.
ahead,
So
man, don't worry.
Doobie and Corey.
Fucking hot.
Are you just talking like? Is it just gonna be like you watch it kind of thing, or is it gonna be like this, like the article with like the butt plugs, where like they hand out the dildos and they teach the best way of doing it, and like would you have like a room full of high schoolers like gagging on dildos?
I think potentially. I think I'd have like an elective course for high school seniors specifically, male or female, where a professional in like sexual education teach them safe ways to give a blowjob or receive a blowjob. I think that seems totally reasonable to
You
me.
didn't say safe earlier. You said pleasure.
Oh, well, hold on. You think I mean like unsafe? I want them giving unsafe blowjobs and fucking choking to death? Like what are you talking?
No. Wait. I'm trying to make sure you reveal the monster that you are. Just saying safe isn't the same as the conversation that y'all were having earlier.
Hold on.
So maybe I missed
Pleasure
something.
would absolutely be included in that. Yeah, absolutely.
Pleasure was the like
Pleasure
theme for this
and
conversation.
safety. Hold on, because again, like I said earlier, I'm interested in teaching our like high school students the entire breadth of human experience.
Mhm.
That includes pleasure.
Yes. So you would have, Jesus Christ, I don't even want to regurgitate what you're saying, but that's what you stand for. Okay, cool. So Corey, you stand for that too? You'd have a
Oh,
classroom with
I think
teenage
I
girls
think
with
no,
dildos?
don't put words. I think
I'm asking.
I gave a pretty conservative answer in terms of, like, in principle, I can conceive, not what Doobie's conceiving per se. I can conceive of some sort of expanded sexual education, probably reserved for,
What would
like,
that look like?
last year. Oh well, I'm not like a sexual educator.
Yeah,
Uh,
none of us are.
like,
Right?
yeah,
We've been giving our opinion all day. Why
well, no,
stop here?
well, yeah. So
Don't worry,
that,
guys. It'll be developmentally appropriate.
uh,
Don't you worry. Yeah.
but I can
Fucking
conceive
sickos.
potentially, and to maybe answer what Lactoid was trying to pose to me in terms of, like, I'm not advocating for something like demonstrative or like showing whatever pornography.
Thank you,
But, like,
Corey.
if it's an expanded education, like, let's say having discussions about kink, and let's say what those are, something that's, again, something more expanded or broader in
What about
scope.
what Doobie just said? Like, what if they, like, I mean, the question I'd like to ask was if they handed out dildos like they did, like this LGBTQ health center did, if they handed out dildos and then they were talking about how best pleasure in oral sex, you would be
Uh,
okay with that?
handing out, like, I'm okay with, like, pictures, like, showing that
No,
they exist.
no, you were okay with dildos when we talked earlier, right? You were okay with dildos.
No, when did I don't think the words ever came out of my mouth. I'm okay with dildos. I think I pretty much made it
Are
clear
you okay with dildos, Corey?
that I would.
You said this earlier.
In my,
Maybe
no,
I'm wrong. No, I could be
I'll
wrong.
let you. I don't think I ever said. Anybody on the panel want to correct me if I'm wrong? Yeah, like, I think I made my position clear in the beginning. Opening statement, like, I don't trust anything that came out of this article, and that until I see what the actual lesson was.
No, we're not asking you, do you trust the article? We're asking you if the article is true, if there were kids and dildos and butt plugs in the same class, they were learning sexual whatever, are you okay with that setting? And that's specifically what I'm asking you right now.
No, I would
It's
typically
nothing to do with whether you believe.
I would typically stick to just, like, pictures of, like, figures, like, in a book, like that. That's fine by me.
Okay, cool. I thought you were more extreme. You're like kind of a pedo. Okay, cool.
You meant more like reasonable,
Okay,
less
Bilbo.
less lost in the ideological sauce. Yeah.
Muted.
We can't hear you,
Yeah,
Bilbo.
yeah, muted.
Muted,
The
From
things up.
Discord.
Oh, imagine if
Uh,
I was not a fucking idiot. Wouldn't that be great? Yeah, I think what this really boils down to is, like, the difference between education and, I'm going to use their word, celebration. When they involve drag queens and sex toys, they're doing it to be salacious on purpose. They want us to be having these conversations because every time we have this conversation, it gets moved a little bit further. Oh, well, maybe we won't have blowjob class, even if it is elective. Maybe that's a little too far, but you know what's not too far? Having dildos and butt plugs in the class, that's probably okay. That seems totally reasonable. We just let this keep happening for years and years, and the celebration aspect of it is just leaving the education behind. You just don't need it. It's just not necessary, and it's not the place of the school. And I really feel like there's nothing else that can be said about it, because Doobie, and even though he left us, Joe seems to be kind of all on board for so-called comprehensive sex education. And I think, and to talk about, by the way, on the female genitalia, the idea that we do not introduce a clitoris is kind of strange to me. So high school wasn't that long ago for me. I don't know how old you guys are, but it was only a
It
couple
doesn't
years
surprise
ago
me.
I was in a sex ed class.
These guys are all old bucks, not me.
Oh, are you guys all old heads? Well,
Yeah.
well,
I'm
anyway.
not.
The way they did it.
Yeah, I'm not at all. Don't listen.
Well, the way they taught us is it was actually, they went over the anatomy. Everyone's seen the chart of, like, the balls and the penis, and everyone's seen the chart of the vagina. They went through the whole anatomy, and they talked about reproduction. So that's how they did it. And they said, this is the penis, this is the head of the penis, these are the balls, this is where the sperm comes from. And then when they talked about the vagina, they did talk about the clitoris, and they did tell us that the function of the clitoris was a female orgasm. The reason they included this was to say it was not necessary for reproduction. And it was done in an educational format. It was not done.
Yeah,
in a,
contributing
"Hey, everyone."
to the fucking epidemic of bad sex in our country.
Yep.
I do think it was taught the same way at my school.
no.
So I think, yeah, I agree with Bilbo.
Well, so there's a difference, right?
Identify-
So that's what I mean. That's all I mean, is that there's a difference in the approach when you're approaching it in a way that is celebratory of the sexual act versus educationally. That, I think, that is the main difference.
Yeah, you're just in favor
Identify-
of not preparing our children for like life, basically.
No, I'm
Well,
in favor
we
of
also
the
gotta be careful about
school
like
staying the
shaming
hell out of
men
it.
into doing this, like stuff they don't want to do, like regarding the
Identify
Like, I don't want to touch it, right?
You don't want to touch it.
I identify
True.
generative theme.
It would-
Identify generative theme, codify it, and then problematize.
Decodify it.
And then you get the entire process of decodification, and then the Overton window on what is acceptable shifts to the left. And all you need to do if you want to understand where this is headed in our future is just Google Scholar or Google sexual citizenship for children. You will understand
crazy.
that you will understand that it is
Wow.
already in, for example, in Georgetown, they are already teaching in college textbooks that the idea of childhood innocence is a conservative myth, and that what we need to do is we need to understand that these are just adults. They're just little adults with less information, and that childhood innocence, or the idea that they shouldn't be taught everything and all sex acts shouldn't be celebrated, is actually conservatives trying to maintain the cis heteronormativity, and it's anti-LGBT, and you'll see it. You'll see it in the next few years, and then you'll come back and you'll be like, you're right.
In terms of what you said, no, that should be a thing. You should be able to say no. Like my female partner, I actually really don't want to touch that. I don't want to like I'm not really concerned about that part. That's not the important part to me in this interaction. Furthermore, don't come anywhere near my penis with your mouth, because that gives you the heebie-jeebies. Okay, so but that should be part of sexual education. That's right. Yeah, right. Like, yeah, touching the clitoris, that's the devil in, right? So we should let her know, right? So yeah, but this should be part of sexual education. You should talk about how some people don't want to engage in certain acts, and that's okay. And I mean that
we should talk about
seriously.
cultural trends on pleasure as well.
I'm 100% on board with that. Like, I do agree that there does need to be more of emphasis on like, don't ever feel pressured into doing something you don't want to do. Nobody is owed your body. Nobody is owed your time.
I don't think that's what Prime was saying, though.
Incorporated in sex ed, because that
you were
wasn't
talking. You were talking about
opposite way. I think Prime was saying that in the sense of, hey, if you want more pleasure, these are the people you should avoid. I don't think he was saying it in the way that you were.
It was like implicit kind of.
You're talking about what should be done by teachers. There is a massive distinction about what should be done by family, by guardians, and what should be done by teachers. And this goes to show that anything that you think is positive is something that is appropriate for teachers to be teaching children. Regardless of that, you prove that you have no boundaries in terms of what it is that the state should be doing in terms of teaching your children and what parents should be doing. And that comes with values. And that is a serious fucking problem.
Okay. So
Can I say something really quickly, please? So I feel like I feel like you guys are speaking of this as if like this is like somehow makes me like a pedophile or something, which is really strange. I think the reality is in some states it's absolutely legal for me as a 34-year-old man to have sex with these 16 and 17-year-old girls, right? So there's a huge possibility that they're going to be engaging with this kind of stuff from people who want to take advantage of them much earlier than you guys seem to be thinking. I think we should absolutely equip. Well, okay, well,
legal in this country.
Yeah, hold on. Like, you can have sex with like a 16-year-old in Nevada. Like this shit's legal all over the fucking country.
And that's why if you're a mom and you have a daughter who's straight, right? Maybe when she's 16 or 17, you want to talk about these things. Maybe that's a time where we don't have dad around, right? And we're just sitting down and we're like, hey, this is an important conversation about things that like you're not going to hear in school. What you don't do is advocate that adults that aren't your fucking children teach techniques in sexual activities to people isolated from the parents. It is a wildly different thing to say between saying something is information that people need and teachers that are not parents should be teaching these things, right? It's like you wouldn't make the same argument that Catholic priests teach this to their altar boys. So why the fuck are you saying that teachers teach this to their students?
Wait, hold on. Would you be okay with it if the parents consented to this?
No, I wouldn't.
Well, they did
Just
consent.
Well,
and
I'm
we're
asking.
not okay with
Hold
it,
on.
so-
I'm asking Scott. So, if the parents consented to an elective course for their senior age, like son or daughter, would you be okay with them teaching this kind of thing?
I wouldn't be okay with
It
the school
depends.
system.
Hold on, I'm
How
asking
does it-
Scott.
Period.
When you say these kind of things, like I would have.
I
to
mean,
look at the totality of
blowjobs.
circumstances.
I mean, teaching them how to give a good blowjob and like choke on the dick.
Probably not.
Unless you're
I
into
would have
that
to
kind
look
of
at
thing,
it.
that's fine.
I would have to look
Oh,
at
this
it
is
exactly what it is you're talking
wild.
about.
Well, I think this is the problem we're talking
Like,
about.
this is-
you
like,
just let the
this is-
parents-
So there's a possibility
this
then
is
that you'd
already,
be
like-
okay with it.
They're highly unlikely. Like
that's
I would
why
have to see
I
what it
didn't
is.
flesh
you're
out my
talking-
curriculum. I
Highly
said
unlikely.
It depends.
Okay. What's your
In a
curriculum?
private institution where parents choose to send their children, and you're dealing with someone, even then you're talking about specific sexual acts. Like it's not sexual acts, but you're getting into the realm. You're getting into the realm of like sexualization, where you're at a point where you have a child that you're in the realm of like sexual harassment by an adult, regardless of whether or not the parents.
No,
consent.
that's silly.
And even if the children consent, they're not capable of consent yet.
These are like
that's not what
17-year-olds
you're
we're talking about.
So
Like, come on.
wait, Fabian, this is what I want to ask you, because you've brought up this context of private school and all of these things. Like, and I know you have like a different value system, so I just want to understand how you fend off these things. So I think there are things that children cannot consent to. And I think that even if we were to construct a system where their parents could sign off on consent, that's still abusive to said child.
Yes.
So I wouldn't be okay with the construct of that system, even if parental agreement was like achieved.
You sometimes
some
reach-
shit parents.
Wait, hold on.
Some things that you do,
Because
like
I want to hear Fabian on
Yeah,
this.
Jess, you get it out.
Yeah, I want to hear Fabian on this. So, like, go. Somebody was finna talk over you.
So first, as a libertarian, I have two systems that I'm looking at: morals and ethics. The libertarian system of ethics is just describing what is against natural law, what is a non-aggression principle. That doesn't mean that I don't have a personal moral system where I would never advocate something or where I think something is wrong. But under libertarianism, I need to find aggression, right, to determine that is morally unjustifiable. And that's just a fact of logic, and you can't argue against it. I know people will attempt to, but they're just engaging in a performative contradiction. Now, in terms of my personal ethos, terms of my personal ethos, I would look at every single one of those people as disgusting pieces of shit. But like, I would have to look at the curriculum and look at what is going on to determine whether or not aggression is actually present.
But wouldn't you say, if you don't believe that these children can consent to this, that's naturally aggressing against them? If you don't think that they have the ability to...
A child can't consent to anything, right? Like a child can't consent to bedtime, but I wouldn't say it's inherently abusive for parents to force a bedtime on children, right? Like I need to find aggression that is present. And so when you're talking about detailed sex acts with children that are even teenagers, right, that is not developmentally appropriate, I think you're getting into the realm of something that is psychologically damaging or hurting to them. To be having adults explaining blowjob techniques to 16, 17, 18-year-old girls in school.
Doobie, you want to jump in? And then I think
Yeah.
you want to explain your curriculum?
No, I'll pass on that.
Well, I'm kind of curious. So high school seniors, which is like specifically what I'm talking about for these like elective courses, some of them are 18 years old, right? So like if they cross the magical line from 17 to 18, right? Would it then be okay to teach them these kind of things?
I'm not okay
with the parents' consent
at all.
Personally, age of consent is a weird number that's just kind of arbitrary. Personally, I think it should be 24, and I think 18 should be with parental permission, right? Because the brain's not fully.
26.
I think it's insane that we let 18-year-olds go off to war or sign student loans without, I don't know, parental involvement, right? I think it should be 24, but I think you should be able to do most things so long as you have parental permission. When we talk about we used to marry off when we were 15 or 16, and why don't you agree to that? And it's like, well, the thing is that when we used to marry our daughters off, it was extremely taboo to elope. And it was almost always that the father or the head of the household was like, look, this is a good person and a good man with a farm and is working hard. Now, I think we're in a better position now that we utilize 18 as that system. But yeah, that would be part of my answer. I don't care that 18.
Hold on. So to be super clear,
I think it's a bullshit number.
Yeah, so because you said like 18 with parental consent. So if an 18-year-old high school senior had parents that consented to them taking this course, and that 18-year-old wanted to take the course where they're learning about blowjob techniques, like would you be okay with that?
I'd still be concerned with it. Like I would be against it, like personally, morally being in the school, right? Like, but you know what I mean? Like, you know, you know what I mean? Because like kids are going to talk. That person's going to be in the fucking hallways at the locker talking to their 16-year-old girlfriend. Like, oh my God, or boyfriend. Like, oh my God, I just learned so many great blowjob techniques. Like, probably shouldn't be in the schools at all. But like, if some 18-year-old wants to take a class on better blowjobs and the parents are okay with it, and it's like after school, I guess, you know, fucking Khan Academy, you have your fucking competition.
We got you almost there. We're almost there. Inching toward the truth.
No, we're almost getting away from it. Fabian, hold on, wait.
We're talking about 18-year-olds with parental consent.
I know, but why don't we do that separate from our school system? Why would we see this as a value to construct as a part of our school system at all? So if there's an 18-year-old that wants to take this class and there's some fucking club downtown, yeah, hey, you, your parents, whoever the fuck, go down there. But why does this need to be a part of our school system?
It doesn't.
I think it does.
So if I argue that it shouldn't be a part of our
it's
school
fucking
system,
creepy. It's creepy pedo shit when you're teaching fucking seniors how to get good blowjobs.
I can wrap this up, or I can wrap this up, and I'm gonna try to address your previous questions, GSU, that we never got to. So you talked about like why not like push like Christianity and marriage, right? Because of marriage, according to my own stats, right?
I was just using the same logic that you were using, right? It's like from utilitarian calculus position, they're the same.
Okay, so you don't have any stats that say Christianity like is a more orgasm or anything. Okay, all right, then I thought
no,
you did.
like there's tons of like that's a really prominent area of sociology called sociology religion
In
like,
general, like,
okay, two things.
like that's not even a controversial thing.
I haven't.
He was talking about Christianity and people getting married, and then he was talking about married women and their ability to go orgasm. He wasn't talking about all three of those together. So just to be clear, but yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, I just haven't seen those stats on Christianity. I would actually be very interested in seeing that. Okay, so to move Christianity out of the way, I wouldn't use that because Christianity is
left this room a long time ago.
Oh yeah, of course, threw it out. But like Christianity is self-harm. So I would be, because of the damage it would do. Like I don't think that outweighs the benefits of like more orgasms, right? There's all kinds of ways to get more orgasms, but there could be some harm associated with it. So I certainly wouldn't use Christianity. Okay, marriages though. Marriages, if society works better because people are married, right? And I know that's what you believe, GSU Gambit. If society is
I believe
better,
what now? I'm sorry. I gotta parse it out now because you said I believe.
Sure.
You said it.
Testify.
You believe that marriage is makes society better. The more people are married, the better, right? You're like against.
Yeah, I think it's generally better for kids. I think all data show that. Yeah, go ahead. Okay, perfect. We're fine.
Sure.
Yeah.
Cool. Don't worry. I'm not trying to put the word.
Make sure you didn't sneak into thinking. I'm like, okay.
No worries. Ahead. But yeah, so I say that I think that the benefits of marriage are pretty manifest, and that'd be great. What's a big reason why people don't stay married, right? It's unfulfilling sex. People break up, people cheat, people divorce because of unfulfilling sex. It breaks up marriages because
usually,
of heterosexual women. You get to it later. Heterosexual women aren't coming. This is the way it is, right?
Right. Why?
And so I'd say, hey, to facilitate those marriages, it does because this is an important part of life. We want our children to be well-rounded. At least that's the point I think public education should be. Then we should have sexual education that gives them a basic understanding of how to provide each other pleasure. And then maybe we could say, rather than like literally giving them blowjob lessons, saying, okay, well, maybe there is some material that you can access when you are an adult, right? Like not porn. I'm not telling them to go to porn, but like maybe there's some other further educational material and point them in the right direction. And so that's not necessarily taught in schools. I think that might be a reasonable compromise. But
Like
at
the
the
Kama
very
Sutra
least,
for homework.
That's a great idea.
Prime, wait. So
But
let's
Prime,
just-
when we look at unfulfilling sex in marriages, right, where women, usually women, right, predominantly women, choose to leave a marriage because of unfulfilling sex, it's predominantly in women who have had 10 or more sexual partners.
yeah, there's no.
This
they
is
know
not
about
true.
that
This is
out
not
there.
true for virgins. This is not true. This is not true for people who've had one sexual partner. It spikes at 2 sexual partners because, and we don't really know why, but we theorize that what has happened is they've had enough
Comparison.
previous sexual partners
Yeah.
to want to explore more, right? And then it plateaus again from 3 to 9 sexual partners, and then it starts to skyrocket the more sexual partners you have. So again, by your own logic, what we should be teaching people is whatever you do, don't have sex with too many people because you'll have an unfulfilling sexual life and your marriages will fall
No,
apart.
you got it
Like,
backwards though. But you have that
No.
backwards, right?
No, I don't
No,
have
you
that
do have it
backwards.
backwards. No, you got it backwards. No, you got it backwards.
What do I have
so-
backwards?
What is
okay,
that?
so yeah. So you're saying that don't have more sexual partners because you'll have an unfulfilling sexual life.
Sex life,
It's like-
yes.
Yeah,
and less and more likely to be divorced from unsatisfying sex.
yeah, right. Or you could say that like here's something. You could say that it's okay. It's okay that sex might be important to you. It might not be, right? Everyone has relationships for all kinds of different reasons, and they have different priorities for those relationships, right? It might be money, right? You might want a guy with a law degree, right, and not his penis, right? So you have lactoid. Like it might be just security, whatever, right? And if sex happens to be one of yours, right? If you're a person who finds that you enjoy sexual relationships, different sexual relationships, understand that you should take that to account in terms of marriage, or you might have an unhappy marriage. That's actually might be a really important thing to introduce to people. That unlike how like our general culture teaches you, it's just for love, right? But it's for more than that. It's for money. It's for security. It's for it's for lots of things, and including sexual pleasure. So keep that in mind. I think that's a great thing to add.
One last question, because I gotta go. So would you say that with all the statistical data that shows that heterosexual relationships produce the best lives for kids, you would say that heteronormativity is a great thing, and we should push heteronormativity over alternate lifestyles because all the statistical data about the outcomes of children in those relationships is far better?
No, the research doesn't say that. First of all,
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
No, it
You
doesn't.
can't
No, it
find,
doesn't.
you can't
No, it
find
doesn't.
anything.
No, it
that
Never
doesn't say
seen
that.
anything like
No,
that.
no,
I
Listen. I challenge you to find anything that doesn't say that. And what I'm specifically saying is the children are with their biological parents. So I want you to find anything that disagrees with that. Go ahead. No, you don't have to talk.
GSU
You can
Gambit.
send me anything. You can send me anything.
GSU Gambit. You're right? But what
I
you
know
said
I'm right.
originally was the issue, right? Because the biological parents things are better, right? Because you don't have what's known as
Sure.
Cinderella effect, right? Where you have where you're 40 times more likely to have a
No,
step parent abuse a
I'm
child.
okay.
But there's no statistical difference, right, between a cis heteronormative adoptive parent or gay parents or lesbian parents,
That's
etc.
definitely not true.
No,
That's not true.
it is
That's
true.
not true.
All
Send me
of the
any link. Send me any link. You don't. You can
don't know how to
convince
do
me.
research. You
Send
don't know
me
how to do
any link.
research.
No. Yes, let's assume that I'm idiotic. I've never done research on this topic. I haven't argued it 400 times.
Listen,
I'm not you. Oh, no. I'm an idiot. No. I'm stupid, right?
Nobody
Called you anything. It can even be from an obscure
Nobody
website.
called you an idiot. We're just pointing out that you're wrong on something. You're like, cite your sources like a goddamn leftist, right? It's
Nah,
a
JC, they all
commonly
think you're
known-
fucking stupid. Don't
it's a-
listen to
It's
Don't
a
listen to
commonly
this.
known.
They're all laughing at you.
No, we're not. Don't listen to him.
It's a commonly known thing that biological parents have less abuse, have better outcomes for their children. But when it comes to non-biological parents, it doesn't matter what the sexual orientation of the parents are.
I just want to see anything that supports that claim. Anything. It can even be from a website that you created.
Dude, just
so
Google
you can
it.
go. You
can find tons of info.
No. Listen. I don't know how to use Google.
It's not my job to Google for you.
No. I'm silly. I'm an idiot. I've never
Wait,
heard.
well, hold
of
on.
it.
What's the
So
claim?
don't
I
even
missed
know
it.
how I would begin.
Juicio,
I don't even.
what's the claim, Juicio?
No,
If
no, no.
it's out there, I'll get it
So
for you.
what I was asking Prime was if we know that there are things that are demonstrably better due to all data that's available on the topic, why wouldn't he push for those things under the same premise that he's using to push for kids to have pleasurable sex in lower grades?
Not lower grades. Like in like high school, I said upper grades. I kept saying the higher grades. In
What?
fact.
Grade
Okay.
school. Let's say grade school.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thanks for getting it right. All
Doesn't
right.
make it better. Doesn't make it better. I'll say whatever words you want. But yes, so if we're doing this under the premise that we want a better life for these people and we don't want them to have these blah blah blah, then yes, I think that we should teach that, hey, heteronormativity has actually been a great
I
thing.
will take that on the chin. I will take that on the chin. Like, and I'm sure you've probably sent me that data before, and I actually haven't actually.
I'll send it to everybody. Maybe
Yeah,
not Fabian, maybe not Corey, but
maybe,
yeah.
Maybe send it to me again. But anyway, one or the other is, I'll bite that bullet. Maybe it is the case that heterosexuality is the path to the most happiness. And I could guess all kinds of reasons why that is, but whatever. But even if that's the case, well, then my point isn't to teach people how to be the most optimal, right? Not even the most optimal sex. That's not the point.
Mm-hmm.
The point is that this like pleasure is an important part of this activity. It's not simply for reproduction, right? If we want to teach them how to form healthy relationships, that's another thing that we do in sex ed, right? They talk about these things like consent. They talk about these things like boundaries, right? All of those are in the context of a relationship. If you want to have a healthy relationship, then your partner has to feel that you take your pleasure seriously, right? That is a worthy goal to have. And here's a basic idea.
I didn't mean to imply, if I did, that you were trying to teach them some ultimate form, but you were using some kind of comparative framework to say this is better than that. And I would think that you'd be completely against a conversation of heteronormativity seems to have better outcomes for kids, so we should just teach that. Because that's the best outcome possible that we know of comparatively. I would think you'd be against that, but you seem if there's a comparison, teaching the one that's better as preferential.
So that's my problem, because like this is too simple. We've had this conversation before. You know my feelings on this, right? You know that I feel like the reason why.
That's why I'm appalled.
The reason why heterosexual normativity has those advantages is societal, right? Because we treat being gay as a disability or some sort of disadvantage, as we attach a stigma to it. So I'd say that it's not an issue, right? But you are going to have a rougher time. It's simply the case. I would prepare my young gay students to say, hey, these are the troubles you're going to have, just like I would do that for my minority students, that people are going to treat you unfairly. Yeah, that should be part of it too.
Would you entertain the conversation of, well, these are the troubles you're going to have, and if you were this way comparatively, if you're a white
if
you arrange yourself into this
if I Michael Jackson myself, things would be better. Sure,
Michael Jackson's not white. Let's not don't let them claim Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson is definitely not.
Michael Jackson has skin color like Johnny, but Johnny, you're going to say something.
This is. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. I just wanted to say really.
No, we can hear you now. It was the
okay. Sorry. I just wanted to say that I did just put a informative little study or group of studies overview in chat, as well as in our little sidebar right here, that actually says that 75 out of 79 studies conclusively say that children of queer parents have no added distractions or issues comparatively with straight parents. Of the 4 that were actually conclusive that they had more issues, they were actually, from what I understand, they were criticized because they were all studies that included basically the breakups of families. Okay,
I tried to click to see any of this.
whatweknow.inequality.org from
No,
Cornell.
it
Hey,
allows me
thank
to
you.
click it. Never mind. I
Dude,
clicked the
Shadow
image,
Warden
but you have to
fucking
click
coming in
like
clutch.
visit source website. I will
Okay.
look through this and I will see
Hey,
if
boys,
this
if you
is
want to get a hype train
equivalent to the
going,
topic that
do
we had.
you, boys.
Okay,
I
thank
won't
you.
do
I
like,
just wanted to put that in.
Brian
I
go on
was
about it for 20
intrigued
minutes.
by what you
I
said
appreciate
because
it.
I had never heard that statistic before, and so I wanted to look it up myself.
Yeah, and I will say one thing that I don't know if it was Lactard or Fabian was correcting me on. I was speaking more biological, but I think there's tremendous
Yeah,
amounts of research.
Biology is
just
better,
yeah.
Yeah.
That one is But I think there's also research to the other as well. But
There's a lot of research that
Thank you, guys. I
conclusively says
appreciate
that
it.
children who do not live with their biological parents are more likely to have behavioral issues. However, that's not always the case with queer parents. I wanna make that really clear. Like a lot of children who
on
have queer
average, you
parents.
agree. On average, you agree that it's far better. All like every single possible outcome that we
If you live, it is conclusive as far as the research that I've seen that if you live with at least one biological parent, you are less likely to have issues concerning questioning your parenthood and things like that.
Wait. I just want to make sure we agree with the larger statement because that one I think was it was close but a bit different. All studies that talk about the outcomes of kids raised by their biological parents.
Yeah, you said heterosexual earlier.
Yeah, I know. I'm changing that now because I'm trying to make sure we agree on the foundation. Heterosexual is like upstream from there, right? But
yeah,
kids raised with their biological parents, that configuration is far better than any other configuration for any stat that you're going to look up. You agree with that, right?
From what I've seen, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
The problem, the real problem.
Can you DM me that study, Johnny? Go ahead, Scott.
It's in the sidebar right here.
I'll send it to you.
It's in StreamYard.
No, I got you.
Yeah, StreamYard chat.
He hates StreamYard.
Oh,
I'll send it to you. I'll send it to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, the problem is when you start doing this consequential analysis of like what is right or what is wrong, or what should we be doing based off of the outcomes, you're engaging in a crystal ball, right? Which is that you don't know the unintended consequences, and what you measure is based upon what it is that you value, right? Like you might value certain metrics above other metrics, or you might ignore metrics altogether, or just not know about them. And so the question is, when talking about certain things within sex education, is what is morally justified, right? And what's not what we know is morally unjustifiable is aggression. And you have a state, right, that is taking your tax money to prop up schools. Okay, it forces money to be stolen from you to create schools, and the presumption is that this is the best for everyone. And so if you're going to have public institutions, it's very important that sex education be as sterile as possible, lack as many value judgments as possible, and instead only teach safety and only teach those things that are necessary to inform people to engage both in safe sex, but also to understand how to use the systems to protect themselves, as well as like what are healthy boundaries, etc. Anything beyond that in a public school system is automatically the government overstepping its bounds as holding in trust for you your children's education. In a private school, such as the example that we were given, things become blurrier, right? Because the only way that you can prove an unjustifiable moral of aggression is that the parents aren't involved, right? Or that there's some type of harassment or psychological damage done. It's very difficult in this case to prove that, despite the fact that we can obviously tell that it's political indoctrination for all of the things that Bilbo and I were saying about generative themes, drag pedagogy, etc. We know that that's not something that we might not morally want. We don't want to create communist agitators against cis heteronormativity, but the parents might want it. And if you can't prove that it's actually damaging, right, then it becomes a personal moral thing in whatever system you're engaging with. We can say this should not be in public schools, no ifs, ands, or buts, and
Scott,
we probably shouldn't do it.
I'd like to have a larger discussion with you at some point in time as like the purpose of public schools, because it's something that we keep dancing around. So maybe that would be a useful discussion for us to have.
Fair enough.
Because Okay. Did anyone else want to jump in on this?
I just want to clarify to make sure that I guess we're on the same page with GSQ Gambit in terms of like, so yeah, you want to revise your earlier statement in terms of like when you said like heterosexual.
I don't. But what I wanted to do was I wanted to make sure we agree on the base, because if that base wasn't clear, then we had an even deeper level of disagreement.
Okay, so you're still of the position that children do best under heterosexual conditions, and like you want to like basically you want a heteronormative society.
Wait. Whoa. All right, cool. Let me make sure I answer this question in total. So one, I have never advocated for only having children in heterosexual environments. I was using that to show Prime the necessary like nonsense that we would devolve into with his ideology around this thing about better pleasurable sex. So me personally, I advocate for people to live their familiar relationship however they would like. I don't push forth a thou shalt be heterosexual, nor do I think we should as a culture. So I'm not saying that. I was only using this as a point to Prime in this discussion. But now to move back to what we were talking about though, maybe I didn't say the word married as well, but I was talking about married heterosexual couples, not just heterosexual couples in general. But yes, I will stand by that claim. And I will say one thing. I was looking through one of these. I don't see any positive claims being made. So I think I should revise my statement. I haven't seen any research that makes positive claims or claims of general overall wellness of kids in those configurations versus heterosexual married couples. That's what I should say. Because
So
no, go ahead.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead if you want to finish.
No, I'm finished.
But like, so it's your opinion or your position that you think children basically do worse under same-sex couples.
That's a way to frame it, but yes.
Okay, well, yeah, that's a fault. So I linked in the Discord chat one pretty thorough review.
Send it to me. Send it to me, and we can talk after this.
Yeah.
Can you put it in the sidebar? Because I don't know how to use
that
it.
is incorrect. But I'll leave it there.
No, just it's in a Discord group chat. The group DM.
Oh, ours?
I thought he put it in VC chat. I'm like, I'm not finna go look through that.
No, I totally understand. I wouldn't expect it, but yeah, the Discord.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll
apparently my chat is saying that some studies suggest that lesbians are better.
Yeah, that I linked that
adoptive,
in.
Yeah,
it's gonna be on some random stat. It's not gonna be general overall wellness. That's why I wanted to posit that claim as well. I don't want to say.
You know what it is? You know what it is?
Go to jail less, right?
You know
I
what
don't
it
want to
is?
be with some
Hold on, GSU Gambit.
You
know what it is? It must be woodworking. Right? Apparently, there's some secret about woodworking that only biological dads, stepdads don't have time for that shit, right? Biological dads and lesbians are engaged in a lot of woodworking, and that's clearly beneficial to the children. You just watched a clip from our Twitch channel, Fabian Liberty. If you like content like this, please like and subscribe here on YouTube, or go ahead and give us a follow on twitch.tv/Fabian Liberty.